There we go. Welcome, folks.
Welcome.
So thank you guys very much for being here. Let's go ahead and start with just introductions. So do you guys just want to tell us a little bit about, so tell us what you'd like to be referred to as, what you go by, and then tell us a little bit about kind of your story as like you kind of identifying as a gifted kid and what that was like.
So I'll just give my description after everyone else finishes up.
Okay. So I'm Sed. I'm in my final year of my college program. And so my story is in elementary school and high school, I was able to, like, I didn't always hit it out of the park, but in the places that counted, I could always make things work. But then when I got to university, so for example, there were all these other tasks like finding good internships and helping out professors with research assistantships and doing side projects. And all of these were things where I either like did where my results were mediocre compared to my peers, or like I didn't do them at all. So I went from a place where everything I did, like I could make work, to a state where everything I touched just turned into ash.
Okay.
Okay. I'm Alcom. Do you want me to? Yeah.
Yeah, go
I'm
for it, man.
Alcom. Cool. I was like labeled as like a gifted kid like early on when I was like in elementary school. And like throughout like elementary and middle school, I never really had any problems with like any of my classes. Um, One of the feelings that I always like associate with is like there was kind of like this weird like caste system where like I was like pulled out of my classes and like taught different material, and I was always kind of like separated from like everyone else who wasn't in like the advanced classes. And then coming into like high school, when I had to when I went to like public high school in my second year of high school, I had to like reintegrate, and so that was a weird feeling. And then on top of that, um, things just stopped coming as easily to me, and I realized that I never really developed like good study skills, good time management, things like that, and I was just consistently falling behind. And this last semester in college has kind of been like it was my first semester in college, has been like the all of that like kind of conglomerating together, and I just did really poorly, and I'm actually dropping out this year and I'm joining the military.
Okay.
Okay, I'm B, I guess. So basically, same story, like labeled gifted kid in like elementary school. I did like pretty fine up until like pretty much until high school finished. I graduated here early from like an aerospace academy, but I didn't really want to do like aerospace stuff. So I thought I might want to do engineering things. So I had like a full ride scholarship essentially, and I lost it because I like failed a couple of classes for really silly reasons, and so I decided to try to do like engineering things. So I got like a job at an engineering firm, and it's just not something I wanted to do. So now I've just been doing nothing for like the past year and a half.
Okay.
I can go. I go by Soul, and yeah. So I was like early on labeled as gifted kid. Our school district had a gifted and talented education program. They called it like GATE. And yeah, same story. Elementary, middle school, high school were just like a breeze. Basically, I put in minimal effort and still got good grades, which made it so that I didn't feel like
Thanks, Phil. Yeah,
I didn't even have like the energy to try at school, and that's basically where I'm at now in university. Is I'm still trying to do the bare minimum to get good grades, and I can't find the energy to pursue other things or like work on side projects or try to find an internship. Yeah, that's where I'm at.
Okay.
Cool.
All right, and I'm Jacob. Yeah, I grew up, there wasn't a gifted and talented program when I was growing up, but like kind of like forging one ahead. Ended up going to a prestigious college, just kind of going down this constant, just going down this path of like, pursuing like getting good academics, and just kind of going down this vague STEM engineering path until like junior year, where all I was doing was massive tons of work, and like was not really socially connected at all. And at that point, I had like no internships and whatnot. I just kind of broke down, and then almost failed my thesis senior year. And I got one job at like an investment firm for like 4 months that I ended up like having to leave because of anxiety. And yeah, it's just things just built up until it broke. So
Wow. So
Okay, I don't remember if anyone else says anything else about themselves, but I guess at this point, I guess I'll introduce myself and how I relate to this video. So, like Sed and Alchem, how Sed and Alchem both said, I was a lot more like Alchem. I was a Excel or advanced or whatever other bullshit description they give you. I was a very high performing student from elementary school all the way through high school. I was getting consistently high A's. I think my lowest grade was like a B minus in high school in advanced courses and college courses. Like, I fit into the niche of a gifted kid pretty standardly, and like Alchem said, I was surrounded by the same students because a lot of the same students were also in these programs. There wasn't really people falling in and out. From elementary school all the way to high school, I had this basically the exact same course schedule as everyone else in these classes, so I got to know them really well. But then whenever I had to take a class that wasn't an advanced course, that socialization was extremely difficult because I didn't know any of these people, so I didn't develop social skills very well. Then I didn't develop time management or hardworking study skills very well either, because despite the fact that I was getting these very good grades, I wasn't actually trying. I just happened to have a natural knack for the way that the education system works, which essentially just rewards memorization. And if you're good at it, well, then you're going to be a gifted student or whatever. Math processing came very simple to me. My hardest topics were usually English and arts, because that's not the way that my brain functions. But I fit into the role of an honors kid or a gifted kid pretty structurally of what you would think those are. And then when college rolled around, in senior year, I had a very depressing episode that had nothing to do with academics. And despite that, I still did pretty okay in my academics. Then college rolls around, and now I am both depressed and do not have the structure that is basic schooling, where someone mentions this later on in the video, but I'll just mention it now in my introduction. There is that structure of like, you have to do it. There is no choice. So I was very good at that. But when college rolls around, there is a choice, and I decided not to. And when you combine that with depression, it just led to failure of actually failing a large quantity of courses my freshman year of college, dropping out for a short period of time. I'm back at school now, and doing good, but that doesn't change the fact that there was a downward trajectory from what people believed I was capable of and what I performed as. But yeah, I think that covers my introduction.
Can I think for a second?
Sure.
Yeah.
absolutely.
We have to play this card early today. So I guess let me just think out loud. So I think there are kind of two general. We've got kind of a fork in the road. One is how you got to be here, and the second is what you're doing about it. Right. So like I'm hearing like different things. Like so, some people have sort of dropped out, haven't really been doing a whole lot, sort of didn't cut it. Some people are sort of like scraping by, and then you've got Alchem here who's like decided to drop out of college and join the military, right? And
Yeah.
so I find myself kind of being curious about like, and because you guys use like some common terms, right? You guys kind of talk about the extra stuff, like why it's hard to do the extra stuff. You guys talk about lack of work ethic or like other things that have sort of been responsible for your struggles now. And then you guys also talk about the caste system and sort of being treated differently. So I think those are all sort of things we can dig into. I wonder a little bit about you guys talk about lacking motivation and some of these other things, but I wonder a little bit about whether that's actually like a misdiagnosis and sort of digging into what it is that like really holds you back. So if you think about applying for an internship, like literally what is the problem that you run into? So those are all kinds of directions. And like I said, we can sort of talk a little bit about what it's like to be where you are now and how you guys made the decisions that you did. Yeah. So, I mean, is there anything that actually, so maybe this is a good way. So is there anything else? Did you hear anything from any of your colleagues that you guys are kind of curious about?
Yeah, actually, the military thing stood out. Like, it's just a very big life change, and it's something that's like very scary and something I would never, probably never consider doing. So I'm curious about what made you decide to do that, Alchem.
So before Alchem gets into his speech, which, and again, I've watched this, so I know where it generally leads to. But I just wanted to get into the idea of the military because senior year, actually most of my high school career, I actually planned on joining the military because I was part of my local JROTC program. Huge, don't recommend it. But anyway. So what they get into, whatever. No, I'll get into that when they get into it. Again, I've watched it, so it's difficult for me not to overshare and time it appropriately. But I'll just get into that of I wanted to join the military very much for many of the same reasons that Alchem actually did, and many of the same reasons why the others will speak on why they think it is reasonable or a good idea. I'll get more into it after Alchem's done and after the discussion is had a little bit. But I guess I'll just leave it on that I relate very much to this idea of the military.
Yeah. So one of the things, like another like driving factor in me, like a lot of the anxiety I feel with like going to college is, I feel like in the non-STEM fields, there's like a real lack of like a defined path on like how to get to like an established career. Like if you do like art, drawing, video editing, those can all be hard fields to get into because you have to go through like independent people, like independent firms and things like that. And it's a very like rigorous thing you like place upon yourself. Like for like you do have to do like a lot of freelance for like journalism and for drawing and for video editing. And then even in the STEM fields as well, I feel like there's a large oversaturation. And so one of the driving forces for me is like financial stability. And I live in the US, and I mean, we put a lot of money into our military, and whether or not that's a good or bad thing is kind of political, but like at the end of the day, that would get me, established as like having a career and like kind of starting off in a way that like college really doesn't give me that level of like financial security. And I'm doing like academic things as I go into the Navy. Like I'm doing like a nuclear program. And so one of the things is like I hope that I know that I work well with like a very like regimented schedule, which is something that like military academics is like notorious for prescribing to its students. So I know I can like function well in that type of environment. And it is like a lot of hard STEM, which is like something that I am good at, like just naturally. So it should come easier than if I was doing like psychology major or something like that. Um, but it's at the end of the day, it really is just kind of like a deal of like financial security. It's available, and it seems like a good career path for me. A good way for me to get like established as like, in my life.
Very quickly, again, before they continue on. I believe that if the other four members, B, Said, Sol, and Jacob, all took the ASVAB, which, if you don't know, is the military exam that determines what jobs you can take. If all four of them took the test, I could guarantee that all of them would also qualify for the nuclear program, which is the hardest program to get into. And I imagine all other gifted kids would be able to qualify into that program because the ASVAB is really not that difficult of a test for kids of our description, I guess is the best way to put it. I qualified into the nuclear program. And for the same reasons that Alcom says he's joining are the same reasons why I consider joining, of financial stability, of a career path which is defined, because I didn't know what I wanted to do out of high school. I barely know what I want to do now, and I've been out of high school for 7 years. I'm doing something that I find passion in now, but think about how much time I have used up, or whatever, however you want to state it. So I understand Alcom and many other people's idea along these same lines of it gives you structure, it gives you a career path. Because again, if I had started at the time that Alcom did, which is right out of high school, I'm assuming, or whatever, I would have finished my designated time already and been probably employed at a nuclear facility, earning, a 6-digit salary very easily. So while I think it's a bad path now, that doesn't mean that, like, inherently, well, whatever. Won't get into that. I understand the reasoning for people to do it, and I also understand why I consider doing it. And again, there's more to share. This conversation goes on for a bit, but yeah, I just wanted to show how much I and probably a lot of other gifted kids relate to Alcom's available choice.
I think that makes you the bravest out of all of us here, because the rest of us are like either we're failing or just crawling by, and you managed, like you mentioned before in one of our earlier conversations, that your parents were not really on board with you joining the military. So yeah, I guess I commend you for having the courage to make that move.
Thank you. Yeah. It's a lot of, it's like stressful, I guess, but it's at the end of the day, like it gives me a lot of so one of the things is like I've never been like diagnosed with anything, but I've always struggled with like anxiety, like social anxiety, performance anxiety, like existential dread about like the future and things like that. And so like the military, just like having like that thing where it's like, oh yeah,
Big same on the anxiety, existential dread. I guess you mentioned two different type of anxieties, but big same.
you go in and like after I get through basic training, like I'm kind of set. Like I'm just kind of like I'm just in there and I'm good to go for like the next 8 years of my life. I'll have my medical, my dental, and like everything covered. And that like the amount of like weight that takes off of my chest, like I can't even like speak to how amazing that is to me.
I can really relate to that, like wanting like a step-by-step sort of program that at the end will give you security for sure. I can, yeah, I think that's really good.
One of the things, sorry.
No, go for
So,
it, Malcolm.
yeah, one of the things that stood out and this is just kind of like, I think it was I want to say it was Soul that said it, but it was like, or I think we all kind of like talked on it, but like scraping by and like doing the bare minimum. I didn't really like put words to that, but that's certainly like a feeling that like resonates really well with me. Of like, I feel like through all of my academics, it's always just been like a very like it's not so much that I never had to try, it's just that like I only tried to the point that it was like beneficial to my grades or the things that I could put like a quantitative value on, where I could be like, okay, I sit down, I do my homework for an hour, I get like 6 study sheets done, that does X amount to my grade, that gives me, so much so much like points towards like the end of my year total. Like if I need like 1,000 points for a semester, then that gives me like 100 points. And like it's very easy for me to like compartmentalize that and be like, okay, this is how I do it. And that's like not being able to do that with like college, like for like a career goal. That's what scares me.
Completely understand what Malcolm's talking about here. In school, I was very easily able to decide what to do and what not to do. For example, if a teacher, this example springs to mind because I actually discussed it with someone recently. I had a teacher in high school who would check the homework like every other day or every 3 days or whatever, occasionally enough for me to understand that I did not need to do the homework at all because I understood the material well enough that not doing the homework wouldn't punish me academically because every time that they checked, it was understood, silently understood among me and the teacher that I still get what's going on. I don't need to do it. And for some reason, they let me get away with it, despite the fact that homework is obviously there to teach you to perform tasks or whatever. But because I had the level of understanding, they were willing to just let me skate by. So in situations like that, or in situations where I did the bare minimum, there was a biology final project. It was AP biology. The final project was something that we had 5 months to do. The teacher gave us in advance, way in advance, all of the information we needed of what the structure of the assignment is. All we had to do was pick the topic, do the experiments related to it, and then present the thing, the project. And I was able to do it all, literally all of it, on the last night before the assignment. I did one experiment 2 months prior. It's something that I guess I can get specific. It doesn't matter. I'm fucking way out of high school at this point. The project that I chose was how music would affect someone's physical performance. So therefore, if you're listening to your favorite, just any music in general, your favorite genre, whatever, if it'll affect your performance in sports or in athletics. So the way that I did it was I did one experiment where I gathered some classmates because, again, I was in the JRTC program. So I gathered them. My JRTC instructor allowed me to do it because it forced them to do some physical activity, where I played music and they did push-ups, right? I got a total of how much? 2 months later, the assignment's due the next day. I bullshit all of the numbers. I make everything up. I do it all in like 3 hours. Turn it in. A week later, we get it back or whatever. I got the highest score out of everyone in that AP course. It was the stupidest thing in the world. I didn't deserve it. I didn't work for it. It was just that I was capable of lying well enough and understanding the process of the experiments or what the teacher was looking for to do it. So that's a perfect example of basically my entire academic history of bullshitting my way through it, and I still bullshit my way through things in college. I do just enough to get the grade that I feel I need, which has changed in high school, elementary school, middle school. It was always aim for the A. You need an A because you're a gifted kid. You need it. In college, I understand a college doesn't really fucking matter. Like, unless you're going into something like trying to aim for like one of the best workplaces possible, your GPA doesn't fucking matter, your degree doesn't fucking matter, just that you have it matters. So like, I'm just aiming for C's in my classes, and if I get higher, great. If I don't, well then I failed. So I'm aiming for C's, and I will do what I need to get like a B minus so that it averages out to a C. So I'm doing the bare minimum still, just my definition of performance has changed. But not in a way that I see as inherently negative either, but that's fine. Anyway, yeah.
But like I think there are like other examples of like all of us growing up just kind of doing the bare minimum of like that's just kind of how we were raised to some extent.
Yeah.
Or
So let me ask y'all: Are you guys envious of Alchem?
Particularly.
I'm happy for him that he's found something that he feels comfortable doing, and he's been able to make a decision, because I haven't found that. So
I'm not envious that like he's going to the military, but I really admire, and maybe in some aspects I'm jealous of, being able to just make a huge like decision like that and go through with it. I feel like in my world, or in my mind, the university is just like a fact of reality. Like I have to go through university, and I have to find a job at the end of it with my degree, or like what else is there in life? Almost, it feels like that powerful to me as a construct.
Would y'all say, said Jacob?
Hmm?
What do y'all think?
I don't know.
I mean, I wouldn't say. I mean, for me, university wasn't that. So for me, a lot of it was actually trying to like escape the ruts of the university paradigm, because it was like my school is just very much trying to. It like made everything competitive. Like even the social scene was like prestige oriented, which was yeah. So it's like,
So
I don't know. Maybe at some point I was, but it's like maybe like in high school I was, but it's like through college it's kind of like disillusioned to that.
okay, what were you saying, said?
I'm not envious of Alchem in the sense that I resent him, but I guess hearing about how, well, it's I'm not envious in the sense that I resent him, but I look back on myself and I think, God damn it, said, what happened to you?
And when you say what happened to you, what are you? What ballpark are you pointing that question in?
Having taking steps towards some semblance of a career, being able to have some kind of employable skill. Like I have like a mixed bag, but they're all sort of like I obtained them just by chance. I stumbled into whatever internships that would take me, and they're all like a mixed bag of niche things that don't really fit together. Whereas Alchem seems to have taken like a direct step that will, put some, that'll add some direction into his future.
I can't speak for every kid that would every gifted kid. But it feels like a couple of them agree with that concept that Sed just spoke of, because I saw a couple nods among them as well. But I feel like me, as well as a couple other gifted kids that I know, would describe themselves as jack of all trades. We're all okay. I hate using we because, again, I don't know all of, like, gifted kids is a very broad, large quantity of people. But I'll use we in the sense of me and the people that I can actually speak for. We would all say that we are pretty good at everything. For some reason, we are able to adapt and become slightly above average at everything. But then we struggle to be good at things. And obviously, if we're above average, other people would see us as good, but we don't see it that way. The discussion will get more into why later on, so I won't go into too much about that right now. But we don't see it that way, so therefore we always see ourselves as only marginally above average, if even that, despite the fact that other people see us grasp things so easily and readily, I guess. But yeah.
I've just been like sitting around here, not doing much.
So I see that you guys are steering clear basically of the word envious, but y'all are happy to use words like admire.
It has this negative connotation to it. I think
it does have a negative connotation, right? And so I think it's interesting because, like, what's the difference between admiration and envy?
Well, okay. Like you use the word yourself, right? It's if you resent the other person for their ability as well, and you don't like, yeah.
Interesting. So you guys you're saying that envy is coupled with resentment?
I think so.
That's how I envision it.
Okay.
So I don't envy Alchemy in that way. I admire him.
Okay. So and would you guys sort of? I thought Sed did a pretty good job of like voicing what he admires about Alchem. Would you guys agree with that sentiment? That like basically Alchem is like he's like taking a step forward in a definitive way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So if we're kind of saying I want to be able to do that too, let's try to understand what motivates Alchem to take this step forward.
Yeah, how did you like start making that decision, I guess?
I mean, if I'm keeping it a buck, it was the financial insecurity. Like, like one of the things is I have like a bit of a rocky relationship with my parents, and so I was moved out for a bit, and dealing with my own finances. When you don't have a college degree or like any real like superseding skills to merit, the only thing you can really go into is the service industry, and that shit will like work you dry, and like you'll come home at the end of your days tired and beaten, and it's sometimes like 60-hour work weeks. And I was doing that on top of like going to my community college, like my local community college, and like that shit's brutal. Like, pardon my French, but that is brutal stuff to go through. And like I kind of was coming towards the end of this year, and I was just like, I can't do this. Like whatever this is, like it's not worth it for me. And so I was desperate to find something. And I like in the school that I went to, like my high school, there was always a strong presence of like military recruitment, and I had like never seriously considered it in the past, but I had like a few of my friends had gone into it. And I know some guy friends of mine who have been like really happy with it. And so that was just like, it was kind of like there and available. And I, sat down with my recruiter and I talked to him about it. And I'm happy with the decision. And a lot of the other people in my life are pretty happy for me. And so I just kind of said, we ball, and did it.
So what did you guys hear motivated Alchem?
Desperation.
Yep.
Yeah,
Need to do
that's
something.
yeah.
So it's interesting, right? Because we think about motivation as a good thing. Like, we think about it as a positive quality. Like, we strive for motivation. But what Alchem is telling us is that his motivation is born of desperation. And
Yeah.
what we're sort of hearing is almost like a bottom of the barrel kind of story, where he hit rock bottom. Like, there's nowhere else to go but down, and it doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of chance to go up. And oddly enough, I think that there's a lot about Alchem that I think I can sort of personally relate to as a gifted kid who struggled. I mean, I think out of all the groups that we've sort of talked about, I think, I identify with y'all the most. And I think there's a certain desperation to it. I think there are also like elements of like ceding control, right? So Alchem, like, you guys don't trust yourselves because you're not going to do any more than the bare minimum. And so, like, all Alchem has to do is like sign up, and then there's no takebacks, right? He frees
absolutely.
He frees himself of his mind, because it doesn't matter whether he wants to or feels like it or whatever, because they're not gonna give him a choice. And so he's like sort of ceding control of his life, and then like relying on them to provide. As he said, he responds well to regimented structure, which I imagine actually all of y'all will. That if there's a situation that's challenging and regimented and doesn't give you guys a choice, then y'all will actually do really well. I think, though, it's kind of interesting because, I'm kind of curious about ego. Alchem, do you think that your ego has anything to do with your decision?
Could you elaborate a bit more on what you like? I mean,
Before they get into this, because again, I know where this is going. Ego is strange in that no one ever, no matter how intelligent they are or unintelligent they are, want to admit. Also, whatever. Anyway, no one wants to ever admit how much ego they have, because ego is generally a negative trait, or viewed as one, right? Like, oh, you have a massive ego. You're egotistical. Like, that's a very bad trait to have. That means you clearly think so highly of yourself that you negatively view other people or whatever. But I think it's important that everyone understands that they have an ego about themselves regarding something. It doesn't matter what it is. You have an ego. And it took me a very long time for me to accept that my ego is fucking massive. Like, despite the fact that I don't think I'm good at anything, which they'll actually get into again in the video, and others relate to the way that I'm about to say this. Despite the fact that I don't think I'm good at anything, I still hold myself to a higher bar than other people, which clearly is an egotistical thing to do. That clearly is me stating to myself that I am better than other people, despite the fact that I don't think I am, which again they'll get into. But ego is huge in you realizing that you have it so that you can manage it a lot better, which is something that I'm currently working on.
I don't know. Could you like ask the question a different way? I'm kind of confused by it.
Absolutely. How do you feel about yourself joining the military?
I mean, I'm happy with the decision. I
Sure.
like
I
I
think it's a good decision.
like yeah, like growing up, I've always had
I don't, but whatever.
like I feel like the reason I always did well in school is because like it wasn't a choice. It was like, you wake up, like, and your mom is like, all right, get in the car, or it's like, hey, the school bus is here, or like your dad takes you or whatever the situation is, and you go and you sit, you can't really like leave, right? And your teachers are your authority figures. They tell you what to do, and you just kind of you got the regimented schedule, and I mean, it feels really good that like it's kind of like obviously it's not like super self-imposed, but the fact that it's like it's a decision that I'm making, but I also know that like once I kind of like what you said, once I sign that, we know whether or not I want to do it. I'm in for however many years I sign up for, right?
Mhm.
Like at that point, that's pretty like it feels great.
Yeah. So let me ask the question in a different way. How do you feel telling other people that you're joining the military?
Kind of weird. I so I mean the military is like a really good opportunity for me, but it's kind of out of pocket for me. It's not something that I would like ever really consider doing. Um, it was kind of something like it was born out of desperation, and it's not really like within myself to do it. Like I wouldn't like just if I had the choice between like going to college. Like if you had asked me 3 years ago, I would have never said I was going to the military. That would have been like the bottom of the list.
Mhm.
So I'm kind of apprehensive about it. About like the way I tell people about it. Um,
And how do people
yeah,
usually respond?
they're normally like, "Oh, wow, that's a great decision. You know, that'll be great for you," and all of that stuff.
So, what did y'all notice about everyone shared their story?
Before they continue, um, this is just a personal experience. I have no idea if any other gifted kid would relate to it, or because I don't know how many gifted kids tend to trend towards the military. But it's Smudgy. Are you gonna run away again? Anyway, um, so when I discussed joining the military in high school, a lot of my peers were very proud of that idea. Were very positive towards it, which definitely trended me towards that idea. But I also had the weird personal experience of because I was in the JRTC program and my attachment to the military was already established at the time where I was a gifted kid, unlike Alcom, who's doing it after. Um, I had the personal experience of all of my AP teachers, college level teachers, honors teachers, whatever.
And how did
Smudgy hit the play button. All of the teachers I had looked somewhat negatively towards that. Some openly negatively, others somewhat negatively, but towards the idea of me joining the military because as someone who was performing well in these courses, they saw it as giving up potential. So it's weird that I had both ends of the spectrum of where obviously the military associated people who taught JROTC, as well as the kids in JROTC, or obviously all of the teachers who are supporters of the military, which would obviously be a large majority or whatever, because support the troops, whatever, yeah. Like, they had a positive outlook, and then there were the people who saw my grades, saw my potential, and were wondering why I would give up the smarts of someone who could get into like in their opinion like a high-ranking school or even to an over-exaggeration an Ivy League school or whatever. Why would I give that up to do something less rewarding to the intelligence that I had available to me? So that was a weird personal experience, but yeah.
who did we gravitate towards?
The one who'd made a decision or who'd done something.
Right. So when Alchem shares what he's done, what is he met with?
Praise.
Praise, admiration. And so let's just think a little bit about, before the decision outcome. So where was he before he decided to join the military? Where was he?
Very low spot.
Right? So failed out of college, sounds like, or dropped out or something.
Yeah.
And so I think because I sort of saw pieces of this in myself. I don't think joining the military is a bad idea, by the way, just for the record, but I want us to understand a little bit about why we make decisions and like what drives us. So like Alchem gives us a very logical reason. The first reason he gave us was super logical. It's for financial security. It makes sense. Like if he's like anxious about his financial security and whatnot, like it's a good reason. We dig a little bit further and we get to desperation. Right? That like even though he sort of talks about financial insecurity, that like he's living this life and he wakes up one day and he's like, I can't live this life anymore. I have to live a different one. And I think oddly enough, what you guys maybe admire about him, and here I could be projecting, but I almost remember like I used to wish for catastrophe. I used to wish for being tested. You know, I wanted to like just like what I hated more than anything else was like limbo and like not needing to scrape by. Like I would have been fine if you had said, I'm going to drop you into an arena and you have to fight a lion to the death and I'm going to give you a club. I would have been like, hell yeah, let's go, baby.
Yep.
Right? Give me death or give me glory. Like I just can't stay stuck in between anymore.
I very much relate to this, and it's something that I'm trying to overcome myself. And I've had those talks with my own personal therapist or whatever. This idea of all or nothing is very much within myself and apparently among all of them. So it's like a general thing of like how we were brought up or what we were taught to believe, of like if there isn't this propelling factor for us, we don't care. And that's extremely negative. But it is just the way that I guess we think, or that we are taught to think. But yeah.
You guys feel that way?
Oh
Yes.
Tell me about
Yeah.
that.
Absolutely.
Jacob?
Oh, there's so many. So the joke, like the weird thing I tell my friends, honestly, I'd feel better when I'm sick. I'd actually be more productive when I got sick. Because like expectations would drop and it's just like, oh, what can I get done while I'm feeling crummy? And I actually get more done. But like there's so many there's like so many dimensions of like my anxiety dropped when COVID happened. I felt better and like more eager to be productive when COVID occurred. Let's see, what else? My mom recently got diagnosed with cancer, and that wasn't great, but it's like, it wasn't like crushing. It was like, I think for like the week around that, I was like a little bit more productive. Like, it's very bizarre. Like,
Is that something that y'all can relate to?
I don't like how he avoids saying it because it shows his like fear of it. And I thought of this during my first listen through too. He felt relief when his mother was diagnosed with cancer, which sounds terrible, which is obviously why he doesn't say it, right? But like that relief comes from the idea of like what he described earlier of like, now that he has a factor in his life which people will associate with him being allowed to underperform, it is relieving because now that pressure that he's felt I'm assuming, his entire life of these super high expectations are now permanently lowered, because if anything bad happens, if he ever underperforms again, he or someone who knows him can justify it by saying, well, he's dealing with a lot. His mom has cancer. Like, again, that sounds terrible. But, I mean, that's life, right? Everybody, there's no such, black and white is really hard to define in real life. Things are gray. And for him, it's a sense of relief because of it. So, like, if you want to judge him for that, I get it. But I also somewhat understand why he would feel relief. And obviously not everyone else is going to.
Maybe earlier. I think I tried taking advantage of the fact that I would act under if I had no other choice, and I tried saying, okay, if I sign myself for all these other things, then which will all be catastrophes if they fail, then I'll do them. But then I didn't, and then the catastrophe happened, and I survived, and I realized that I guess there is no way out. Maybe that's just
Yeah, so like you guys see what y'all are doing is that you're not, it's actually brilliant and sad. So like what Sad is doing is he recognizes that he can't motivate himself. Right? So he like recruits the outside world to put deadlines onto him.
Yep.
And the same thing that Alchem's doing. It's like, I can't control myself, so I'm going to create a situation in which there's artificial desperation and I'll be forced to act. And then Sad really gets screwed because he doesn't act. And then you know what the really damning thing is about not acting? Is that he survives. See, if he had really been punished, then he would act the next time. Does that make sense? Like, the real damning thing is that, like, the consequences weren't bad enough.
I would 100% agree with what Sid is describing, and I do this to myself a lot, where I put immense pressure on myself, or immense things that I know if I fail at will detrimentally affect me, and then I'm not motivated, or whatever. I'm not, this usage of words is bad because of what they discuss later on or whatever, but I'm not motivated enough to do them. So then I'm affected negatively, right? Because obviously I signed up to be affected negatively. And like Dr. K says, we continue existing. Like, the punishment wasn't bad enough. So what we do is just do it again, because we, in some weird sense, hope that this time the punishment will be bad enough so that we can learn what bad enough is so that we can avoid it. But the reality is, there is nothing that is bad enough. You can recover from everything, realistically, except for death, right? So, like, we're just in this constant cycle where we negatively impact ourselves, and there's no ending to it. There's no line at which it would ever end unless we die. So we underperform continuously, or do just enough, and it doesn't progress us, so we feel stuck.
Because if the consequences were bad, then if he did it again, then he would act. Y'all see that? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's really what I'm interested in. Is I feel like anyone, if they're in a life or death situation, gravitates towards life, or if they're in a catastrophic situation, they do anything they can to get out of it. But if you're not in that place, how do you go towards ambition or like success, yeah, I don't understand how people have the energy for that kind of motivation, and not like just avoiding death.
So tell us what it's like to not have energy, right? The extra stuff.
You ever watch Revenge? Go ahead.
Okay. Well, it doesn't feel great. It's like the days just kind of slip by. You do your work, and then I don't know, you play some games, and then like the time just gets filled with things that are not really valuable to you. But then you don't even know what the things that are valuable. You don't know what is valuable to you, so you just kind of time just slips by. That's the best way I can describe it.
It feels kind of like monotonously flipping pages. Like you're just kind of like going from one day to the next. Like when I was going through this last thing, I was also working a lot, and it was just like this kind of like day in, day out, wake up, do school, go to work, just like kind of like this dread. And like whenever I had free time, I was like you know, I was doing like partying or like doing drugs or like something to fill the time. And it was just like I don't know, it was like hellish. I could like feel myself kind of almost like decaying, but it felt like I couldn't do anything about it. Like I couldn't take the first step.
I for sure felt this a couple months ago. I was so during April, May, June, I believe. April, May, June of this year, I was unemployed. I was on furlough because of the COVID situation. So I felt this more than near the end of it, near the June part. I felt this more so than ever that I wasn't moving forward and I was existing. This isn't just like a gifted kid thing. This is like a depression thing as well. So I'm sure people with depression can relate to this lack of energy thing too. I know they can. But his description of like monotonously turning pages is a pretty good example of what it feels like to really lack energy. Of like that book that he's describing is endless. So obviously like a regular book, if you monotonously turn pages, you'll eventually reach the back cover. You're done. But for people who lack energy, it feels like you just exist. Like you turn the page and there's always going to be a page to turn again. And those pages are blank. Like because you're not going anywhere, or you feel like you're not going anywhere. So you're just turning blank pages until you're dead. And like that's the way that it felt to me, and continues to feel to me now, just like less so because I'm taking steps in my life. But like I get that feeling of like it's there and there's nothing you can do about it. It's just there, and it will continue to be there.
It's just like gray and dystopian. Like... But
Yeah.
seriously, like it is, right? Like,
No, yeah, absolutely.
No,
yeah.
no,
like an Orwellian. Like,
what I'm really appreciating is that we're talking about this with a bunch of fucking gifted kids, so the number of syllables per word is so high. Monotonously and dystopian.
Yeah.
It's rough out there for us.
Yeah.
We all just going through it.
Said, did you want to say something?
Just a random comment to what Alchem just said. It's rough for us out there. It's so tough because we were the kids who everyone is compared to, right? Like the people who are having difficulty in school, well, we are held to the highest standard, right? We are the kids who are the best in our school or whatever, best in our state, whatever, so on and so forth. Like we're the big fish in the little pond. So why can't these other kids be like the big fish, right? And therefore we're also at the point where we inevitably receive less pity, right? Like when something happens to us, because no one pities the bad guy. And in realistic terms, we are the bad guys comparatively, right? Because we are the comparison point. Because we are the top level, everyone below us can suffer, and we do not deserve to suffer. And the reality of the matter is we're humans, right? Like, we are better academically, but we might not be better socially or whatever. Like, we might be middle of the tier somewhere else or low tier somewhere else. But because everyone measures academic success so highly, that pity just kind of like disappears, which is just something unfortunate. It's just true, and it's unfortunate.
Oh, so you ever watch Revenge of the Sith, where Anakin's just burning up, and Obi-Wan screams at him for failing in his duties to be the chosen one? It's like every day, it's like I have two choices. It's either that, or I numb myself, and there's no option to, and like the option to actually do something is blocked by like a version of me that says, well, we're not going to do that. What are you going to do about that? Said. And yeah, so it's either numb myself or scream at myself, and nothing happens either way.
Good. You want to say something, Pete?
I don't know. I feel like anything that I would say would be kind of like really overshadowed by the kind of problems that I've like heard, I guess. Doesn't really feel relevant.
Say it anyway.
What do you mean?
It's just like basically echoing what they're saying, and like to a lesser extent of so like when I got out of when I like lost my scholarship and I'm like just basically at home doing nothing for like a year and a half. It's been like awesome. I haven't had to do anything, right? And just being able to coast and play games all day, and maybe look for a job sometimes, and or do something just to keep
Half-assed.
like, yeah, like I there's no responsibility that I have to take care of, and it's kind of like scary that feels good. So
100% agree. That's how I felt in the March, April, May of that earlier part I was describing. I had absolutely no burdens. I had the reason why I started feeling the existential dread in June actually is because I had to go back to work, which I did not enjoy where I worked. So that tail end of March, April, May, where I wasn't working, I wasn't doing anything, I was playing games, waking up, playing with people, 12, 16 hours a day, going to sleep, doing it again, going to sleep at like 6 in the morning, 5 in the morning, changes every day, have no responsibilities. I loved it because that societal pressure that had always been built up or that I placed on myself was gone. Like, I just existed. And just like B, I felt bad that I was starting to enjoy it when I realized at the end of May, the beginning of June, where I had to go back because I realized, I felt a little bad about the fact that I really enjoyed doing nothing, having no pressure on me. And it was scary to go back.
I don't know.
So I have a question for Sed and the rest of all. Who are you? Sed says, I know who I am. Right? And it's either scream at myself or be myself. So who are you?
I wonder if that's a trick question because who am I is a question I've been asking myself for every day for the past 19 years of my life. And it's it evolved a lot. But like at this point, I kind of separate myself from the idea of like self or identity. Like I separate identity and what I consider to be the existence of me, if that makes any sense.
Does it make sense to people?
Yeah. Well, I guess
Not really. Not to me.
there's like two different kinds of identities. I think there's one that you ascribe yourself, and then one that other people ascribe you. And it just depends which one you care about more. Be more of who you are. I don't know.
So not to get like overly philosophical, but the way that I see like there's like some like inner me that is just like experiences and feelings, and then there's like an outer me that is like actually can think and speak and form thoughts and has values, beliefs, ideas like ascribed onto it. And I want to be like more. I want to like dissolve all the parts that are identity and just be like okay existing, because I feel like identity puts a lot of pressure on you to be certain things, and if you're not those things, then who are you? So like if you place all of your value of self-worth or who you are on your identity, then when your identity is challenged, you are challenged.
So Soul,
I don't know if that made any sense to anyone.
We'll get there. So who here resonates with what Soul is saying? Like who here is like sort of, or like I'm not really too sure, or like yeah man, yeah.
I didn't get it the first, but the second time I kind of get it. For me, the word I used to describe it is like a mantle. It's like this like ideal self that like I would love to live into, that I would love to be. But like, and not even like in like overly high standards sometimes. Sometimes it's just like a pretty low bar.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's
Right.
just hard for me to like live into that. Like it's hard for me to reach there, and it feels kind of like defeating. And so I certainly get the feeling of like kind of just wanting to be like detached from that, or like get rid of it, just kind of like cast it aside, because I often feel like when I don't live into it, I'm disappointed with myself.
Yeah, and the hard thing about the mantle, I really love that you tossed in that detail, Alchem, is that oftentimes you expect so little from yourself. And that's what's so crushing when you can't even do that.
Yeah.
Right? It's like one thing to be perfect, but it's like another thing to like, okay, let me just like work on my resume for like 15 minutes today. And you can't even do that.
Yeah. Crushing.
So I'm going to ask Sad, but once again, anyone can kind of jump in. I appreciate when people do. So Sad, when you say that either you're screaming at yourself or you're being yourself, like who is that self? Like who are you? Tell us about who you are and how you view yourself.
I guess I see myself as, so like I had a good shot at, I guess, I suppose I have a vision of myself that would get things right, like who would have gotten the right internship, or who would have actually put more effort into those responsibilities, or would have prevented the catastrophe. And then but then who I am is the person who failed to do all of that. So sometimes I feel like I'm just a guy who had a shot and threw it away, and now I've just missed the boat, and I'm like stranded here in limbo.
Again, they'll speak on this more later. But that feeling of what Alcom previously said of the mantle of which we hold ourselves on, or how said aspires to be a perfect someone, these are all ideas that, again, they'll go into this, but those are ideas that are implemented upon us. Like, we're taught these things, but these resonate with me very strongly, because I, like Alcom, for example, or like Dr.K, there's many conversation was of how we, I say we because it seems like it's a common thing among at least this group, how we want to even do the slightest thing, and when you fail, you're so disappointed in yourself with something so simple of like, I want to clean my room today, and then you didn't. Well, you're the biggest failure in the world for not doing it, because it's so simple and you're capable of so much. Why didn't you do it? You're so your potential, again, that word, which is an emphasis that they'll go into later. Your potential is so much higher than that. It's so much higher. So why couldn't you clean your room? Why did you fail? Why are you a failure? And like, that's the thought process that like we as a group go into, of this defining, these lines are defined. Things for us are black or white, period. It's extremely difficult for us to think of the medium. Not cleaning your room really isn't that big a deal, right? Like, you could do it tomorrow. You could start right now because you realize that you forgot or didn't do it. You could do it right now. You have the time. But because you didn't do it earlier at the time that you designated, you are a failure. And therefore you don't think about doing it now. You don't think about doing it again. Or you set a new time limit for yourself, like, oh, I didn't do it before, I'm the biggest failure in the world, I'll do it in an hour. And then that hour rolls by, and you skip it. You're a failure again. Because you missed the deadline, despite the fact that you could do it at that moment. You somehow are still a failure. And that's just the way that we think, or the way that we, again, are taught to think. And they'll talk very much about potential in a little bit.
Yeah.
B, can you tell us like what your experience of that is like, or what you think about yourself, or what thoughts you have about yourself?
Sure. So I guess in terms of like missing the shot, right? I had like this, full ride of, I can pretty much get through all of college, and or at least 4 years, and have no debt, and that's what everyone wants, right? So I have this ability to do this, and I sleep in for a test that's worth 30% of my grade. I just don't do any work in a class that I don't think matters. But then when those two things add together, I just lose my whole scholarship, right? So it's like I still have this ego of, oh, I know I can do it, but I didn't, and this like doesn't match up. Of I don't know, yeah. So yeah, I missed my shot, I guess.
Yeah, so let's talk about that ego for a second. Like, I know I can do it. What do you guys think? Are you guys capable or not?
Depends.
I don't know. Jacob, you want to go?
Yeah.
I mean, it depends on the task, and personally also depends whether I can zone into it. Like in college and high school, like everything was like kind of like if I can get into a flow state and like focus on it, I could get it done. And if I couldn't, it was just like pulling teeth. and like as I got out of college, I did more and more stuff. The proportion of things that were pulling teeth increased, and so it's like, yeah, like I mean, I'm not certain if I could hold down like a full-time job right now, or like, yeah. But I feel like, you know, like certain problems I like very could, like I feel like there's there's a subset of things that I could do very well, and then there's just like, but like a general holistic life probably not. So
How does it feel to say that, Jacob? To say those words out loud?
I mean, I've been coming to terms with it for like the last few months, so it's not like a huge shock at the moment, but I don't know, it's been relieving coming to terms with that, so actually over time.
And what do you guys think that Jacob is coming to terms with?
His idea that he's in some sense like short of his ideal self, and that's who he is now.
What would you say, Jacob? How accurate is that?
I mean, the way I describe it with people is that like the entire time, like it's like you're preparing for a war. Like I've been making like working really hard to make like a giant like battleship turret, and I get to the end and they're like, all right, are you ready to mount it on your battleship? It's like, no, I don't. It's I just have like this massive gun that I have to like carry around with like a little bicycle and chain, because like there's nothing there to actually support, like, you know, going through like 4 years of college and developing like 8 billion technical skills and like philosophy of the universe, when it's just like, you know, I can't sleep, and I like struggle to take care of an apartment, and like I can't network whatsoever, and like I have no like I haven't even started thinking about, like, at no point was like developing the navigation computer to figure out where we're actually going with this thing, and it's like, so yes, I can send a 500 kilogram projectile very far if it's like standing still and placed right in front of me, but we're not doing anything useful with that thing. So
What I'm hearing is that Jacob has faith that he can do it in a perfect set of circumstances. Right? If the stars align. But his temperamental self, otherwise he feels somewhat incapable.
Yeah, when you factor in like the real world and all of the problems that come with it.
Yeah. Right, and I think there's a lot of like powerful imagery there about the sense of it slipping away. Right, because Jacob used to be decent at the flow state. And I don't know if you guys sort of felt this, but then like something happens and it becomes harder. Like, and then each day becomes like you used to be okay. You used to be able to pull it off often enough. And then you see yourself slipping. And then like you can barely pull it off often enough. And then you can't really pull it off as much as you need to. And then it becomes less and less. And it's sort of like, okay, so I think someone used the phrase, like, I missed the boat, right? So like the boat is there and you got 15 minutes to board and you're like, okay, that's no big deal. And then 5 minutes to board and it's like, oh God. And then they're pulling the, the walkway away. And like, if you run right now, you can still like jump across and like get on board. And then the jump becomes longer. And then you're like, but you can still do it. And then it starts to pull away, and maybe you can jump in the water. And even if you jump in the water, they'll throw you a line and you can climb on board. But like every day goes by and it's like slipping away and you're like watching it slip away. What's that like, Soul? I see you nodding emphatically.
Yeah, I definitely felt that during like last year when I was in a class, and like, yeah, the classes are always so easy at the beginning and you understand everything and you're doing the assignments, everything's just going well, and then each lecture gets a little more and more abstract and difficult for you to understand. And at the end, you're like, okay, I need to like review everything, study everything, make sure I have everything right so I can actually get past the final and pass. And maybe you don't even do that because you are just procrastinating or something. I feel, to the question you asked earlier about like whether you're capable, I want to see if other people relate to this too. I feel like I could learn to do anything if I had the energy to. But I don't have, like, the way it's modeled in my head is that I don't have the energy to do any of that, or the passion, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
yeah.
feel that.
And this is just kind of a reiteration of what I said previously. Of that is Soul and everyone who has agreed with them and mine an example of our ego. We think of ourselves as so capable of literally anything. We just lack the pressure, the motivation, or whatever to do it. But the reality of the matter is, we aren't. There's something in the world that each and every one of these individuals is not capable of. It's just the truth. Maybe the skills, maybe the skill isn't inherently in their mind. Like, obviously, if you put enough effort in, right, you can be capable of anything. That's just a factual statement. But what they believe is that immediately, the way that they're saying it is that immediately introduced to a thing, they will be capable of it. They just lack the energy to make that immediate jump into it. But the fact of the matter is, immediately you are not capable of it, and that is our ego speaking. Again, the way that we were taught to think of that we are capable immediately to do anything, but we aren't.
I don't know if that's exclusive to us though. I don't know. I think uh, the difference between, or one of like the major differences between like a gifted kid or like an average kid, I don't know, would be one is told that they're like better basically from a young age, and they have this ideology that they get to keep up. They get to say, "Oh, I am this, so I can push forward with it." And I think that gets you so far, or only so far.
Could I rephrase for a second?
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, so I definitely understand that like everyone has this problem, obviously, but what I mean in the aspect that it's particular to us is that like, do you guys like doubt your intelligence or like your ability to learn things and process things quickly? Because that's something that stays like constant to me, and it's like the only barrier. If I could just unlock that potential by like giving it a boost with energy, would be like, that's like the only barrier to me, is the energy thing. And like, I have confidence in almost every other aspect of like being able to learn and do things.
Yeah, that's kind of what I mean when I talk about like the battleship analogy. It's like, yes, if I could support this, I could level everything, but I can't support it, and it sucks.
Yeah. Like I feel like I've got like the baseline like I feel like maybe I don't know, maybe that's like the intuitive problem solving or like something. Like I've got the things that I need to like that like if I wanted to like learn a new skill or like try to like work on like marketing myself or like marketing X product I'm working on or whatever. Like I feel like I could do that, but it just feels like yeah, like I don't have the energy, like I don't have the passion for it. Like I just kind of like sit down, and one of the things is like I start asking myself like why am I doing this? Like what for what reason? And I get bogged down in like this endless loop of like, well, like why is it important to me? And then like I come upon like self-identity, like who am I? Why is it important to like me? Why is it important to like my ideal self? And I just get like shut down, and I kind of like shut myself down before I even have the ability to like engage with like the critical thinking skills that like that I know, or at least I hope that I have. For
Do
me.
you guys kind of relate to this idea of like shutting yourself down before you even get started?
Before we get into that, I think the outcome's realization of his small statement of, I hope I have, relating to the problem solving skills, is him somewhat accepting the fact that he understands that this is his ego talking. Like, again, B, Soul, Jacob all stated that, like, they can do it. There's just this other thing, or as Dr.K said, once we have the perfect situation, it's not even a question. We'll be capable of doing it. But again, like, that's just like our massive egos talking. Like, there is something we will have difficulty with, and that leads to what Alchem described of, we are scared of that difficulty, so in some cases we don't even do it because we aren't capable of everything. And those things that we aren't capable of, we're just going to avoid because, well, that would mean that our egos are wrong, right? And we don't want to see that because we think so highly of ourselves. At least this is the way that I'm interpreting it.
Yeah.
Can you guys share what your experience of that is?
So it starts with like an idea and you're very excited about it. And then you think about every other idea you've had in the past and it tapering off and failing in the middle of it or towards the end. And you're like, let's get ahead of the curve on this one and not waste all that time.
Again, speaking to the ego thing of like, oh, we found things that we're not capable of or that we failed at. So it's easier to just avoid them in the future because we don't like that idea of we aren't good enough because we should be beyond good enough or whatever.
And by waste that time, you mean try.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not quite the same for me, but it'll be like I'll have like several projects that I've been like working on over like the few years, and it's like, it's like if I really want like one of these things to go, like I have to sacrifice, and it's like, do I really want to, like, is this worth sacrificing, devoting myself to? And it's like, and then like, I'll get into like that mindset where it's like, well, previously, like, sacrificing, like devoting yourself single-mindedly has, landed me in very miserable dean states or situations where I'm like unbalanced and miserable. And so it's just like I kind of linger in that state of like, kind of poking at a bunch of different things and like kind of keeping the dream alive, kind of. But
It sounded like you had something to say.
Oh, I guess for me, it's like maybe it was easier earlier, but now that I've had, I guess, 4 or 5 years of seeing myself being able to do things, but just not doing them, it's like when I try something, when I think about trying something new, it's like I see the whole history of all my failures staring back at me and accusing me. So I just don't start because facing that is just too terrifying.
What's terrifying about it?
I guess so. There's the numbing path and there's the screaming path, and so I can keep myself kind of stable when I'm numbing myself, but then to get to face that history again, then like all the old voices that scream at me and say like, why did you fuck this up? This was so easy. That just, it's just too harsh. I can't like function when it feels like, yeah, I'm not too sure how to put it to words, but it feels like reality changes and I see myself for what I am, and what I am is like someone who has failed and will fail. And like every step of the way, I'm doing things imperfectly. It's like, and a voice in my mind says, "Ah, yes, you see, I was right all along. We've been through this before. I know you. We've seen this. I know what you're doing."
It gets even harder because it's like you get stuck in this numbing space, and the only thing to like, you have to get out of that numbing space, but the only thing waiting there is this onslaught of pain, and it's like, it's like,
Hmm. So, there's a part of me, like, there are a lot of questions I still want to ask, but I sort of feel like if we start asking questions about, I really liked what B said about sort of the expectations that you grew up with and like how you were taught to expect things from yourself. What the impact of being told that you're capable and bright and talented, like, I think that's really important to talk about. But I also feel like we're sort of bizarrely kind of at the climax of the discussion right now, because this is it, right? I feel like we have found the problem. Do you guys feel that?
I can't really put a name to it. Yeah. I mean, I can't put a name to the problem, at least.
But, I mean, do you guys feel like this is the problem? Like, whatever we're talking about right now is the problem.
Yeah.
Right? So you can call it, like, motivation, you can call it passion, you can call it whatever. But, like, there's this idea of, like, decaying, right? That you're, like, stuck in this place and, like, you're, like, at some halfway point. And outside there's a terrible storm. And either you open the door and then, like, you face the storm, and then you, like, walk for a little while and there's no end in sight and the storm is going back, so you turn around and you kind of, like, you go back to your, like, halfway point. The save zone. Like, and then you save, and then you're at the inn, you refill your HP, and then you just hang out there. Because there's nothing on the outside. And then what happens is, since y'all are smart, like, every time you leave and you don't get anywhere, then you stop wanting to leave. Because what's the point? Like said, we've been here before. What did you expect, dumbass? Did you expect the hurricane to stop at some point? This is who you are. This is what your life has become. Why bother? And then we get to B. You're like, actually, this life is pretty sweet. Like, sure, I feel like a failure as a human being. But I've got my snug blanket. Pretty comfortable. It's all good. Get to stomp some noobs from time to time. It's not that bad. So then what happens is you guys start making this halfway point your own. Right? It's not transient for you anymore. It starts to become a home. You start to decorate and turn it into your own place. And then you start to feel stuck. Because, like, the longer you stay there, like, the more comfortable it becomes. And then there's just something, and then, like, now this is where you guys are. Where, like, you wish what would happen is, like, some kind of dragon would show up and, like, knock down your temporary shelter. And then you guys would have no choice. It's like at the end of Metroid. Have you guys played Metroid? Any of the Metroids? It's boomers now. See, it's fucking sad.
I've played tons of Metroid. I love it.
Right, so at the end of Metroid, they have this really cool mechanic where, like, everything starts falling apart. You have 3 minutes to get out. Like, it happens at the end of all the Metroid games. You have to escape. Like, after you beat the last boss, you have to escape in time. And, like, that's what you guys want. You want, like, flooding, where you have no choice, where you've got to go. Like, you've just got to go.
Give me death or give me glory.
Absolutely. Because this sort
Again, black or white. This is just how we see things.
Sort of like weird comfort limbo kind of place. And there's like, and the problem is that the longer you stay, the stronger the hurricane outside becomes, because you are the hurricane. Right? The longer you stay there, the more you beat yourself up. when you try to leave. What did you expect, dumbass? And so each time you guys try, it's like, it's terrible because like each failure doesn't make you stronger. So, you know, we say that what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, right? You guys heard that phrase?
I've heard it and strongly disagree.
What would you say, Jacob?
I don't know. It just depends on what the thing is.
So I'll tell you what we say in medicine, which is quite bleak, and we don't advertise this very much. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger or cripples you for life. Because that's what happens in medicine. Like when you get someone with a motor vehicle accident, they survived and they have no legs. GG. Good job. Right? Because that's really what life is like. Like life leaves marks. Like trauma doesn't always result in triumph like we see in the movies. Sometimes what it results in is like debilitating complex PTSD in which people like suffer for years. I guess this isn't sounding very hopeful. But I think it's important to understand, you know, what you guys are facing. Because I'm going to try to trick you in a second. Because I want you guys to like I think part of the problem here is that you guys are like thinking about potential. And I think a lot of this stuff has to do with like ego and identity and who you think you are and what you think you're capable of. And it's like not respecting what your challenges are. It's like you guys don't respect what you're actually fighting against. You think it's easy. You think it's minimal. And therein lies the problem. Because, like, instead of treating it like a lion, you feel like you're losing to a mouse, even though it's a lion. And the more that you recognize that it's actually a lion and not a mouse, the funny thing is, like, that's going to create your best self. Right? That's going to actually recruit, like, give me death or give me glory. But the problem is that you guys don't think you're facing a lion. Like, you devalue your failures. So if you lose to something strong, that doesn't make you weak. But you guys think you're weak. Does that make sense? Like, it's a truth of yourself that, like, and I think you guys have started to realize this, right? You all have sort of started to figure this out, that, like, that's not really you, but that you guys have been given this mantle, right? Like, you guys have been given this burden. You're gifted. Things should be easy for you, dumbass. And so there's something that's actually really devastating about gifted kids is that they're not allowed to make mistakes. So if I'd say there's one thing that's holding you guys back, it's that you guys don't allow yourself to make a mistake.
So I 100% accept that watching this previously influenced what I described previously, basically the same thing that Dr. K just did. I'm sure I just lifted his words and subconsciously created my own interpretation of them. That, again, it's our potential, it's our view of ourselves, like Dr. K said, that is hindering us the most. Because on my first listen through, I can guarantee I didn't think about it in the exact same phrasing that I used, because that's the exact same phrasing that basically Dr. K used. So I'm accepting the fact that I have gladly or I should say I have proudly digested what he said, as I was able to reinterpret it prior to getting to this point. Yeah.
If you're stupid and you fail, is that okay?
Yeah.
It depends on the failure.
Okay. Fucking Jacob with his 5-head answer. Overthinking things.
Well, I mean, that's like, so, like, you know, there's some things
Weren't
where
you
it's
just
like,
on
okay
about,
for
like, the
me to
mouse and the
fail,
lion?
but, like, you know, like, I'm considering, like, career options, and, you know, like, some of them are, you know, more stable, and, like, there's some of them are more creative, and, you know, like, running out my finances and, like getting evicted is not, like, like, there's certain, like, I have a hard time determining whether potential failures are worth it or not.
Are you allowed to fail, Jacob?
Am I allowed to fail?
It's very esoteric. Very like weird for champ.
We
What do you mean by
afford to
allowed
fail?
to fail?
Yeah, who's judging whether we're allowed or not? I guess it's us, right?
So this is the problem. I'm asking a yes or no question. And what are you guys answering with?
I don't know.
Open response.
Exactly.
Open response, yeah.
I'm not.
Didn't mean to cut Jacob off there, but yeah. I noticed this among myself a lot, and obviously I'm sure you folks have noticed throughout the video or the analysis or whatever that we do this. I do this a lot to my own therapist. They ask very direct questions, and because of how smart we are, we want as much information prior to answering the question. So if they don't give us enough, we want more. And even if they give us enough, we want more. We'll ask open-ended questions to define it in, again, like Dr. K and like Jacob said, the perfect way possible, so that our answer is as objectively correct as possible. So even something as simple as answering a yes or no question is an issue for us, which leads to, obviously, like these 5 as well as myself, having difficulty fixing it, because we are not able to answer a question of as simple as, are you sad today, with a yes or no. We have to for some reason compare to other things, or use other people's perspectives as defining measures for ourselves, so on and so forth, to create an answer that is never as simple as yes or no. We might answer yes or no, but in our heads, our yes might be someone's 5-paragraph essay about, are we sad today, or whatever.
Not allowed to fail too badly.
Okay. Right, so I think the first thing that you guys need to let yourselves do is fail. But you don't, you guys can't even fucking, for all your 5-headedness, you guys can't even comprehend the question. You're like, what does that mean? Do you guys see how foreign the concept is to you?
Well, I understand the question. I just have a hard time answering it because if I'm asked, "Are you allowed to fail?" I guess I would be like if I made a mistake or if I failed, I would be like, "Oh, dumbass, don't do it again," and then I'd actually move on pretty quickly after that. So I'm not sure that I'm similar to everyone in that regard.
Okay. So what I'm hearing from Soul is yes.
I feel like I know that I can fail, but I still always, I just, like what said, it goes back. It's like it goes into the repertoire of the however many years of shit that looks back at you and screams.
Yep.
Like,
right. So
I can, but it'll come back and haunt me.
No. But see, that's the thing, is you're not allowing yourself to fail. So understand this. So the first thing is that stock answer, but generally speaking, what holds you back in life is you.
So also what Dr. K didn't say, and I think would have been useful to say, is in essence, Alchem said no. As he said with Soul saying yes, Alchem said no. But you notice how I described before, and what I do, Alchem and Soul avoided yes or no. They explained it in an extremely thorough way that could easily have been summarized in the way that Dr. K was asking for, yes or no. but they didn't do that. And I don't do that.
Right? Like, that's just how it works, generally speaking. And so what is it about you that's holding yourself back? And you guys have done a beautiful job of, like, describing it, right? It's like the way that you punish yourself and the way that you view yourself. You make a mistake. And then you yell at yourself for that. And then you start to believe that you're someone who makes mistakes. You are a fuck up. You are a dumbass. You're incapable. You're not going to be able to do it. Why bother? And now suddenly, like, you just don't realize who you are. And, like, you're playing the game with a different character. And if you're playing the game with, like, a different character, like the character who has, like, 2 scales, he has 2 skills. Instead of, like, succeed or fail, he has fail or fail harder. It's like you can hit button 1 and you can fail, or you can hit button 2 and fail harder. And, like, that's the game you guys are playing. And then the more you play that character, the more you level up your 2 skills. Which are?
Fail and fail harder.
And that's the voice. Right? You're leveling up that skill. And then, like, you beat yourself up even more. And then you tell yourself, like, why bother? You're a failure. Like, you're not able to do it. See? I told you so. And so, like, you guys are operating under the belief, and I don't blame you for this. It's just like, let's understand, right? And I'm gonna zero in on Sad because I think he's used, like, really good language to describe this, which is like he's got 2 choices: either fail or yell at himself. And so what I'm hearing from you guys is that you guys aren't allowed to fail, and there's a damn good reason that you guys have been conditioned. Like, I don't think it's a coincidence that all of you guys don't allow yourself to fail. And I think, like, maybe Alchem is letting himself do that a little bit, and I think Jacob's sort of getting there. But generally speaking, I think that there's like a reason why this is a common pattern. And I think it goes back to, like, what your expectations were, because early on you weren't allowed to fail. And so you didn't understand what failing looked or felt like.
Again, this is what I sort of described earlier, subconsciously taking what Dr. K said and regurgitating it previously. So I very much agree with this, as me stating it prior showed. What he is saying now and is going to continue to say, I very much agree with and believe to be true.
Right? So, like, if I'm feeding my 3-year-old and she, like, drops something on the floor, that's something she's allowed to do. Like, she's allowed to make mistakes. And it's, like, acceptable. But I think the challenge is that you guys were given, I love this phrase that Alchem said, you guys were given a mantle. Right? Here we have B, graduated 1 year early from an aerospace academy. Well, I don't even understand what is that? I've never even heard of that.
It's just like a specialized academy. So, like,
sure.
There's, like, the regular school,
I mean, first of all, they call it an academy. Right? It's not a school.
I mean, I haven't gone to a school that's not an academy, but
case in
point.
point.
That, I guess. I don't know.
Right? So what kind of expectations does B put him on himself? When he's like, I haven't gone to a school that isn't an academy. Right? And, like, I don't blame B for that, but, like, just think about what that does to the psychology of a child. Like, I'm not going to send my son to a fucking school that's not an academy with the plebs. Y'all are different. Y'all are gifted. Failure's not an option. GG. Too hot to handle for Sed.
F.
Felt too targeted. Maybe he felt shamed because he went to a school instead of an academy. Oh. So, Sed, bro? Okay.
Yeah.
Welcome back.
Yeah. Loading back up.
Right, so, like, I think it starts with sort of this idea that you guys aren't allowed to fail. And then what happens is you guys kind of get into this cycle, which is, like, every failure adds to the voice that screams at you. But, like, do you guys see how, like, that voice can only scream at you if, like, you're to blame or the outcome wasn't acceptable? Does that make sense, or did I lose you guys there? I don't know how to explain this, but like, if you're allowed to fail, there's no reason for the voice to yell at you. Because it's an acceptable outcome.
Yeah.
Can somebody...
When you say,
Yeah.
oh,
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, just like, because when you ask the question, like, are you allowed to fail? Who's judging whether you're allowed or not? And if it's you, then you just have to
Be
allow
okay with
yourself.
it.
Yeah, so I'll ask you guys. So like, let's assume for a moment it's you, and it's always you, by the way. But we'll get to, even like the identity that you show other people, like that's still you doing the judgment. It's that you're putting on the mask of other people before you judge yourself. Right?
Yep.
It's weird. It's always you doing
True
the judging.
W.
I mean, sometimes you guys may have grown up with people like, and I mean, it's sort of untrue too, because you guys did grow up with people judging you, and then that's how you learned how to judge yourself, but like you perceive it as being them, but it's not really them, it's you. It was them at some point, but now it's not.
Yeah.
Right? So like, if we think about social anxiety, you think other people are going to judge you that way, but other people are too busy thinking about the way you're judging them. They're not actually judging you. But you put on their mask when you judge yourself.
And I very much, also Jenkins is on my lap now. But yes, I very much resonate. I'm going to stop using that word because I can't pronounce it today, apparently. I very much understand what Dr. K is saying and believe it to be true in myself as well. I have very, very bad anxiety. Very, very bad anxiety. I get nervous around anyone who's a stranger, and in reality, everyone is a stranger, right? So I get nervous around a lot of people. And the fact of the matter is, as Dr. K stated, they aren't judging you because they are thinking that you're judging them, right? So, as, again, Dr. K said, we, as a group, not only us, but just anxiety, people with anxiety as a group put on this mask, like he said, that these people are judging us. When in reality, again, like he said, we are interpreting these things that may not even be happening, and we are judging ourselves. And that was one of the hardest things for me to understand and for me to accept that. And I still haven't truly accepted it. I understand it, but I still haven't come to terms with it 100%. That nobody cares. You do. And when you stop caring, which is something that Dr. K will say later, and again, I am regurgitating it, when you stop caring, everything gets better. But again, they don't care. Yeah.
So now I'll ask you, so like, whose judgment are you guys really facing? Right? Like, think about your own life and like your experience of the day to day.
Yeah, right.
Fine.
And what do you say about yourself? What do you think about yourself?
And not always the best things. Sometimes I'm a dick to myself.
I'd say most of the time I am a dick to myself.
But I feel like I deserve it.
That too.
I'm doing enough.
Right? And so you guys wonder why you're stuck. So like, the quickest way to get rid of motivation is to explain to people that they don't deserve something. Because then they'll stop asking for it. Right? If you don't think that something is actually a possibility for you, you're not going to try it because you're smart. And I think that like when we kind of talk about passion and motivation and energy, so I think these are all umbrella terms. It's like what I need is like I just need that magic bullet. But like there aren't magic bullets. Like human beings are complicated. Right? So you guys are like I need more motivation. I can't find motivation. Whereas it's like I don't and Soul, you may be a little bit different, but I think for the most part, what I want you guys to really understand is that like it's your own judgment that creates the hurricane that keeps you trapped where you are. And that hurricane, like you were conditioned to judge yourself that way. So it's not, in a sense, it's not your fault. It's just like other people placed this mantle upon you, and then you've like learned how to like put it on every day. And then what happens is like so this is the real challenge, is that if you're stupid, you're allowed to fail, and you can get up tomorrow and you can try. Right? If you like, I played a game of Dota recently, like against a pro gamer. Like a good pro gamer. And boy, did I got crushed. It was like laughable. And then after I was done, I was like, let's play again. Right? Because give me glory or give me death. Like, that's cool, man. Like, and this is the thing, is like, this is what I think is really awesome about like our community and the way that we get misjudged by the world, is like, they look at us and they think we're pathetic. And we look at ourselves and we think we're pathetic, but I don't think we're pathetic at all. I think we're actually awesome. Like, we're going to be wrecking shitties real soon here. Right? And like what, like the thing is, but if I have expectations that I am amazing, and then I like lose a game, like then it's so much more devastating, right? I can't pick myself up off the mat. And that's what you guys can't do. Like as the boat like gets inches further and further away from the dock, like you can't pick yourself up off the mat. Does that make sense? Like you can't queue up again. It's like each time you fail, it doesn't help you grow. It like cripples you further. Y'all with me?
Yeah. Yes.
And so then the question is like, why is that? And I think it all has to do with this expectation of what you're capable of. Because if you flip it on its head, like let's say you flip it and you say that all of you guys are, suck at life. And you start with that. And the funny thing is Jacob is like slowly working his way there, right? It's like relieving. It's relieving when you begin to realize that success in life is not based on one stat. That you guys have all these other stats, and actually, despite having one stat, and you guys sort of understand this intellectually, but I don't think you feel it when you get up on a day-to-day basis, is that like you guys were given a stat that was so high that you didn't have to develop these other things, then you blame yourself for like not being able to succeed when it depends on more than intellect. And I think our society in general overvalues intellect, because intellect in and of itself is an umbrella term. We call kids smart even if they're hardworking. It's like what we say about people, right? Like, oh, you're smart. Things should be easy for you. And then if you start to stumble, what is wrong with you, dumbass? Things should be easy for you. And it's that part that keeps you guys stuck. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
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 I just have not figured, like, I get that consciously, but it's like subliminally it still happens even if I'm consciously telling myself that.
Absolutely.
Like I've been trying to like clear up my house and like make it better, and then like 2 days ago like my drain got clogged and like the grinder got like shorted, and it's like not even my fault, but it's like I was still out for like the day just emotionally.
Yeah. Right? So now you guys have a couple of problems. Which is that y'all have been sitting at this like halfway point for so long that y'all have become deconditioned. You've rusted. Right? So I want you guys to start thinking of yourselves in a bizarre way is like way worse than what you think of yourself. Like, and I know that sounds weird. I know it sounds weird. So let me explain. So you guys think you're way up here, and then you beat yourself up for being over here. And so you kind of think of yourself in like kind of a negative way, right? But at the end of the day, like all of this is built upon the premise that you're up here. You guys get that? You can't be a disappointment without a high expectation of yourself. And so what I want you guys... Huh?
Is it true? W?
Oh, yeah, I'm not familiar with it. I'm a boomer.
Sorry.
So what I want you guys to do is start, like, lowering your expectations.
And again, I'm sure that I, this much, now she's jealous of Jenkins, who's still on my lap. I'm sure that I unintentionally stated this earlier, but yes, we hold ourselves way too highly, and I do it on a day-to-day basis, and it's like Dr. K said, it is the thing that will literally lead us to success once we stop. It's just the biggest issue for us by far.
Right? And I know it sounds kind of weird, but like I think in general, like I'm a big fan, if you guys have watched the stream before, of like letting go of expectations. And so like really meet yourself where you're at. Right? And like understand that like some of y'all are gonna be like, y'all are all like, so here's the biggest scam of being a gifted kid. You know, so you guys familiar with like League of Legends and Dota?
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Oh yeah.
So let me ask you guys something. Gifted kid, what position are they in League of Legends?
Mid laner.
Mid lane.
Top lane.
Incorrect.
Support main.
Incorrect. Y'all are all ADCs. You come online late.
Disrespectful.
And this is the big thing, right? Is we all assume that we should come online fast and early as gifted and talented kids. Hell, B skipped a grade. Right? So we think that like we're like upfront powerhouses and it should be easy for us. And it's not untrue. But in my experience, you guys come online late.
So to continue the analogy for League of Legends players, we want to be Olaf or Vi. We are as early game as... We expect our early game to be so the best in the world, or in this case in the game. The best by far. We are the best early game people possible. But what Dr. K is saying is that we're vain. We come online 3.5 items deep after farming 400 CS or 250 CS or whatever. Like, before that, let's assume we're just irrelevant. We're just farming lane, right? So before that, we're just meaningless. And we don't view ourselves as that, which again is the hardest problem. We think we're supposed to have the biggest impact, the biggest splash possible, as early and often as possible. But in reality, nah. You'll get into it eventually, because we, as Dr. K will say, and sort of has said, we have to accept what we are, and in this case it's the AD carry analogy, and we have to accept ourselves, or give ourselves the ability to fail, and because we haven't, we can't be what we want to be.
And when you hit the ground running, like, it's gonna be like a sight to see. And you will be all of the things that you think you are. But in order to get there, you have to start by not being any of those things. You guys don't understand that, like, y'all are actually playing a handicapped class. It's not a gifted class. Y'all are fucking handicapped. And that's why, like, one of my teachers told me, like, a special needs, a gifted child is a special needs child. And I was like, what are you talking about? And then she, like, sat down and explained to me, blew my mind. That y'all literally have needs that are different from other people. Right? Like, you guys have challenges that are different from other people. And sure, a lot of this is shared and stuff like that. But I genuinely do think like y'all's needs and the way that you need to be challenged and stuff like that, and that's why like the only source of like success for gifted people is usually desperation, because that creates the environment that is necessary for you to thrive. But if you just stop and think about that, like that's one hell of a handicap, right? It's like one hell of a way to min-max your character. My motivation is going to be purely dependent on my circumstances and whether I'm waiting tables and failing out of college.
Which is why, in my opinion, that we trend towards the easy option, which in Alchem and Mike's case was the military. That is the easy option for us. It's you sign your name, you're done. It's simple. It's clean. We want clean. We want, again, we don't like gray. We don't like the idea of unknowns. So we'll go for the most definite option possible. And Alchem actually did. I didn't, because I stopped myself for my own personal reasons. But Alchem did, and I'm sure other people have, in our position or whatever, have gone for the absolute easiest option.
It's like some hyper specialized character that has like plus 1,000% damage and resistance towards one enemy type and does 0 damage and has vulnerability to all the others. That's what you guys are playing. And we can hear it from you, right? We heard it from Jacob. He's like, if all the stars align, I can one-shot this shitty. But otherwise, I'm gonna get wrecked. Bros, you guys aren't gifted, y'all are handicapped.
Wonderful.
And honestly, that was my big realization. It was like, I'm not gifted. I'm dumb. And then you're playing a completely different game. It becomes way more fun. Because then, like, you don't beat yourself up for your failures. It's like, have you guys played Dark Souls?
Yeah.
Okay, now it must be. You guys know what a deprived is?
Sorry.
Dark Souls.
I can deduce.
Right, so like there are different characters you can be in Dark Souls. Like you could be like a knight, have like armor and a sword, and you can be like a mage and have like a staff and stuff. Right, like pretty straightforward. Then you could be deprived, which is a dude with like tidy whities and a club, just like a naked dude with a club. Like that's the way we're gonna play this game. So my first run of Dark Souls, I was like, I'm gonna try to be as powerful as possible, and then I did terribly. Second time I played, I was like, I'm gonna play deprived because fuck yeah. Give me a club, give me a pair of undies, and let's go, bitches.
Yep.
And so what I'm not hearing from you guys is let's go, bitches. Right? Like when you think about like applying to a job or working on your resume or anything like that, it's like, oh my god, you have to succeed. Like, oh my god, you suck. Oh my god, you should be able to do this better. Why do you suck so hard? You're so smart. I hear all that stuff. What I don't hear is like, let's go, bitches. Let's see what we can do. Right? And like, if you guys start to like say that about yourself, think that about yourself, like start to get to know who you really are. Because I think you guys are also stumbling on this idea that like this person that I think I am is like not who I am. This person that like society has constructed for me is like not who I am. So who are you? Like, you don't know yet. So, like, try to learn. I feel like I've talked the most that I have during any of these group interviews, so I'm going to pause for a second and check in with you guys.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So, generally, if I'm getting this right, like our problem is that one of our problems is that like we're setting our expectations too high and they should be lowered because we think we're up here, but we're actually down here or something like that.
Yep.
How do we know where to lower our expectations to? How can we possibly be objective about where they should land?
You don't need to be objective.
Do we just start at rock bottom?
As
or
low
not
as
like
you
rock
can
bottom?
Go. Sure.
Like, as low as you can go. Okay.
Also, I thought earlier you were saying that like with the analogy of fighting a mouse, or like we think we're fighting a mouse, but it's actually a lion. I thought you were going to go down the route of like we'll raise the raise the level of your problem, like say that or realize that it's a bigger problem than it actually is.
Fucking you and your 5 heads. The result is the same, right? Whether I transform a mouse into a lion or I turn myself into a hobbit, like the result is the same.
Right. But one, I have to ruin my ego, and that's really hard, you know.
Yeah. So that's the other thing which is holding you guys back.
Oh, so they do mention the ego thing. I knew I didn't think about that on my own. Like, even when I was saying it, I was like, I think they get to it. But yeah. Yeah, for sure. Lowering our ego is very, very difficult. Not only for us, but just in general. Yeah.
Like, I don't buy for a second that Alchem, part of the reason he's joining the military is because he gets to be the person that he always wanted to be. There is no way that you guys being as 5-head as y'all are, on some subconscious level, Alchem realizes that when he mentions military, everyone is going to admire him. I'm not saying it's a bad decision. I'm not saying that it isn't genuine. But I think that, like, there's a reason why he's joining the military after failing out of college instead of before. Right? And I'm not saying, I really do. I'm not trying to.
No, yeah, absolutely. You're on the money on that one, I think.
Yep. It's fucking ego. Because I know, because I felt this, like, I see myself in all of you to begin with, but especially in Alchem. That's why I went to India and I was like, I'm going to become a monk. Because then I'll be better than all you noobs. So rather than be stupid, even though I've told I was smart and I skipped a grade, I remember, like, walking into my first grade class. In first grade, I walked into the classroom on the first day. And then the teacher, like, gave us a worksheet, and I did it in 5 minutes. I handed it to her, and I was like, can I have the next one? And then she gave me the next one. I did that one in 5 minutes. And then she gave me, like, the one from, like, 2 months from now. And I did that one, and then she gave me the next one, and I was like, oh. And then they moved me to the second grade. And, like, back then I didn't have an ego, but, like, sure, like, as I grew up, I was like, oh, yeah, I'm smarter than everyone else. And so I know what it's like to not live up to the expectations that you set for yourself and choose an alternate path that gives you a sense of self-worth. I think it's good. I think you should do it, bro. It sounds like a good decision. And I think you'll, you know, I'm not trying to, but I think all of you guys have to wrestle with ego, with identity. And there are weird versions of it. Right? Like said, your ego is kind of warped, but, like, you still think very strongly about who you are. And that needs to be done away with. Because you aren't who you think you are.
So how do I begin to do that?
Good question. One that I don't know if I have an answer for. What do you think?
So what I've gotten so far, like, if I'm putting this into, like, coding, it's like if expectation too high, lower expectation forehead.
Yes.
Like, that's the maneuver.
Or if expectation, like, so like B sort of pointed out, there are two sides of the equation, right? There's the way that you rate yourself, and there's the way that you rate your problem. And you can either respect. So this is where, like, I love that you guys said, like, I can't even do the most basic thing. And so then what you conclude is, if I can't do the most basic thing, I must be really dumb. But what y'all need to understand is that most basic thing is the most difficult thing. That's not a level 1 problem, that's a level 99 problem. And there are reasons for that, the simplest of which is that you begin to realize that actually the big and desperate things are easy to do. It's the little things that are hard to do. It's the things that are irrelevant that are the most difficult to do. It's easy to eat when you're hungry. It's hard to eat when you're hungry, when you're not hungry. It's easy to go to the bathroom when you need to pee. It's harder to go to the bathroom when you need to pee. It's easier to help someone when they need your help. It's harder to help someone when they don't. Right? So desperation is, I get that you guys long for it, but, like, what y'all need to understand is that each of these little battles that you guys are choosing to fight are actually not easy battles. They're very hard. Like if you just think about it logically, like the fewer reasons there are to do something, the harder it is to do them. And you guys have created, like, let's take B, for example, like he doesn't have a reason to leave the comfort of his home. And so leaving the comfort of his home isn't easy, it's incredibly hard. So you need to respect the problems that you guys face instead of disrespecting them and thereby like shaming yourself. If that sort of makes sense.
Yeah.
So how do I tell the difference between me, setting my expectations lower in a healthy way and me saying, well, I guess this is a really hard problem. Let's run away and play video games for a week. So how do I differentiate between lowering my expectations in a healthy way and just using it as a way to ignore the problem?
And also, I think like self-deprecating can kind of come like if you're thinking about like lowering yourself, like it's I mean, like I'm like I can be pretty doomer sometimes, like pretty like down in the dumps, and so I think it's easier for me to like sometimes just be like, I suck, but like my ego doesn't really change. I don't really lower the bar. I'm just kind of like self-deprecating.
Yeah, so there's a difference between having an expectation of yourself and not living up to it, and lowering the expectation of yourself. Do you guys understand? Y'all do the first one, y'all don't do the second one. And the problem is that despite multiple failures, your bar of potential never changes. What you're capable of never changes. And therefore, each failure hurts more and more and more. So, I'm sorry, Sed, you had a question? Can you ask it again? Really good question, Sed, by the way.
So what's the difference between setting my expectations lower or setting the problem higher in a healthy way like you're describing, and just using that as an excuse to run away from the problem entirely?
I don't understand how those two are like on opposite, like how does running away enter the equation?
Oh, so I could say, oh man, this is indeed like way too hard for me. I guess it's an acceptable outcome for me to just stay in my room for the next few years and play video games.
I see. So if you lower your expectations and failure is to be expected, then it's okay to not try.
Yes.
What's staving off hopelessness?
Yeah.
Way to put it.
Good questions. Let me think about this.
Also, as a completely random side note, I find it very funny, and I just noticed this from watching this again, that aside from Malcolm, who's bald, we all essentially have the same haircut of brushing our hair to the side. I doubt that is an upbringing thing. I doubt that is in any way related to the topic. I just found it funny. Including Dr. K. Anyway.
So staving off hopelessness is a separate issue. Well, I guess it's not, actually. I guess that is the same question. So let me start by saying, Sed, that's what you already do. Right? So, like, already you guys have there's no point in trying because failure is inevitable. And okay, this is tricky. It depends on where you are in time. Okay? So it's about being, I know this sounds weird, but like if you guys really want to know the answer and y'all are fucking being five heads, fine. You guys want a doozy, you guys want to give me a hard question, I'll give you guys a hard answer, okay? So hopelessness is your mind in the past, the present, or the future when you were hopeless?
In the future.
Good. Next question. Is your mind in the past, the present, or the future when you have hope?
In the future.
Present?
My experience, the present.
Fucking weird, right? Who thinks future?
I do.
I think it would be.
Talk it out amongst yourselves.
Because if you have hope, you think that there is something that will happen that will.
Is that what hope is? That's not what hope is.
Okay.
Let's define hope. If I think something will happen, what's the word we use for that?
You just
Predict.
Certainty.
Certainty.
Yeah, certainty.
Okay, so you guys are saying certainty or predict. I'm going to toss out wild word. You guys may not be familiar with it. I'm going to toss out expectation.
Okay.
So let's go back to B's. So tell us now. Hope. Is hope in the past, present, future? What do you think? Where are you when you hope?
Oh, I mean, I'm in the present when I hope. But,
right?
No.
So this is really confusing because hopelessness is about the future. Hope is about the present. Hopelessness is about an outcome or the inability to attain an outcome. Hope is acknowledging that we don't know whether the outcome is there or not, but I want it. So you're actually in the present. You're in the present looking forward. Hopelessness is about the future looking back. And if you really tunnel down, that's where you guys live, right? So when like Sed wakes up in the morning and is like, let me apply for a job, his mind isn't thinking about the present. His mind is thinking about the future. Failure is inevitable. There's no point in trying. It is a mind that is in the future. That's what engenders hopelessness. Why bother? We're going to screw up anyway. It's too hard.
And what Dr. K is describing is something that I, again, also struggle with. The idea of present thinking. The idea of the future is undefinable. And that's something that Dr. K will say. In fact, I remember his exact quote on this subject. But I won't say. The fact that we don't know. Period. We just don't know. But for some reason, we think that we do because we're smart enough that we should, right? But that's actually just impossible. And we need to accept that. And I need to think in the present more often.
The common element here is a mind in the future. Now, the real problem, the real reason you guys suffer from this is because the more intelligent you are, the deeper into the future your mind can go. And that's what really screws you guys. Right? So your predictive capability increases. Neuroticism or anxiety increases, generally speaking, with IQ, I think. Actually, that's not true. Well, yeah, that's not technically true, the way I phrased it. I will say this. Anxiety is worse in people who are smart. Cognitive anxiety, anyway. Does that answer your question about hopelessness? Or no? Actually, I guess I haven't answered it yet. So I just started with this, right? So like, okay, who here still thinks that hope is about the future? Or that your mind is in the future when you are hoping?
I mean, I still think that, but this would be like where I rewind the video and.
Okay, so let me explain it again. Okay, so for those of you who think that hope is in the present, help us understand what your perspective is.
I mean, to me, hope is like an experiential thing. It's also a religious thing, but it's like, I don't know. I only think it could be in the present because it's just like an experience. Strangely enough.
Yeah, like it's something you feel. Like it's something you go through.
Yeah,
like you experience hope.
You're like thinking about the future, like the subject is the future and what could happen in it, but like the experience or the feelings you have that come along with hope happen in the moment. I think how I would describe it.
Yeah, hope is like a feeling of potential.
But playing devil's advocate or B's advocate, you could also say the same about hopelessness, I think.
Yeah.
Like it's thoughts about the future, but it's in the present, experience in the present.
Oh, but the difference I feel like is with hopelessness, when you're hopeless, you're like almost certain, or you have an expectation even if it's not like a correct one, that everything's just gonna turn to shit.
Sure.
This is
yeah.
It's not certain.
So this is how I'd explain it. Hope is you standing in the present and looking towards the future. Hopeless is you standing in the future and looking towards the present.
Okay. I'll have to think about it more. But...
That's fine.
Okay.
Right. So if you guys are talking about like, how to manage this, I think the biggest thing is to be present focused. Because what holds you guys back is like a certainty or expectation of the future that precludes action in the present. Like your mind is literally making a risk-reward cost-benefit analysis, and your motivation. So this is literally how your mind works. Okay, so it's kind of confusing, but you guys have this thing. So we have. Okay, I'm gonna explain some neuroscience. Okay, so since y'all want to be five-head. Okay. So we have two systems in our mind that are in our brain that tend to be, like people get confused about because everyone thinks about motivation and reward. Okay? So when we think about like motivation, we think about the reward circuitry of the brain and we think about dopamine. Y'all are familiar with this stuff? Like most people are like amateur neuroscientists. So like the idea is that we have a reward structure and that dopamine is the neurotransmitter that like supports our reward structure. And that when we get a reward, it reinforces the behavior and motivates us to act. Right? Familiar with this? Okay.
Yeah.
So we have a couple of different... So the reward structure, the risk-benefit part of the brain is actually not dopamine. It's actually a cannabinoid structure. So there's a different part of our brain that does our risk-benefit analysis. And we actually understand this because people in schizophrenia or in some kinds of neurodegenerative disorders have something called abulia or amotivation. And the really interesting thing is that the people who are abulic or amotivational, their problem isn't necessarily in the dopamine reward circuitry, which is what we think of. It's actually in like this risk-benefit sort of cost like analysis that you constantly is active in your brain. That's the problem that you guys have. It's not about a lack of reward. It's like the calculation that y'all perform about whether an action is worth taking. It's actually a separate circuit of the brain. And right now what happens is you guys make a calculation about the utility of your action. And then you conclude that it's not worth it to do. So it's not that you guys lack energy. And in fact, you guys don't even lack motivation, technically. What's happening is your brain is motivating you to not act. Does that make sense? Like if we think about SED, what SED is saying is that there's no point in me leaving the halfway point because there's nothing good down the road. And so it's a risk-benefit analysis that motivates you to inaction. And this is why like all these like fucking videos on motivation don't help people because you don't lack motivation. What you guys need to understand is that you're motivated to stay put. You don't lack motivation to move forward. Different. So then the question, okay, questions about that, clarifications.
All good with me. That's all.
Okay.
It makes sense.
I'm afraid that I may have bombarded you guys with too much tangential information without actually answering your question.
I mean, it's a complicated question, so sometimes you have to go into tangents to...
Yeah.
Okay, so let me try to like re-explain, okay? So, I'm going to go back to Sed's question, which is like, how do if I lower my expectations so low, then what I'll do is make a prediction that I'm going to fail anyway, so there's no point in trying because I suck so hard at life. Right?
Yep.
So the funny thing is that's already what Sed does. So he's making it sound like it's a different thing, but it's actually the same damn thing. Because right now, he already does a risk-benefit analysis and chooses an action. You guys see that? Whether you think high of yourself or you think low of yourself, he's coming to the same damn conclusion, even though I'm telling you guys to come from a different starting place. Does that make sense? Y'all really got to follow me there.
Yep.
That at the end of the day, he's saying, I'm going to fail anyway. There's no point in action. So that's why I sort of talk about this cannabinoid risk-benefit structure, because it's the same part of his brain that is still running the show. So he's not actually adopting my premise. Okay, so, and I'll get to that in a second. Yeah, so Sed's next question is then, how do I adopt your premise? Right, Sed?
You got me.
Okay.
Exactly.
I get that. So, like, we're walking you to that. So what I want you guys to still notice is that as long as the risk-reward structure is determining whether you act or don't act, you will be motivated towards inaction. Got it? So now let me ask you guys a question. Okay, this is a hard one. Let's go, bitches. Is that present thinking or future thinking?
Present.
Absolutely. But that's like literally not the thought that you have, right? Like literally in your mind, you guys don't have the present thought. You have the future thought. There's no point. Present thinking or future thinking?
Future thinking.
Future thinking.
Absolutely. So some of this, so now the question is, okay, what do we do about it, right? So some of this literally is controlling your mind. Because I want you guys to understand that you can cultivate particular kinds of thoughts, okay? Now we're really going on a tangent, but I want you guys to understand this for a moment. That your mind gets conditioned. What is it that conditions your mind?
Our environment?
What impact does our
Experience.
environment... Okay, so like, how does our environment... So there's the environment, right? So like, but environment itself doesn't do any conditioning.
When something happens to you, you learn about you interpret some sort of meaning from something happening to you that caused some sort of effect, and that changes how you think.
Exactly.
And I'm pretty sure Dr. K is going to say this anyway, but to go back to his let's go bitches thing, which he'll repeat a couple more times, the way that we view it, to re-explain it again, from what he said, is like, let's assume in this situation it's us and someone else, right? Because we can't even say let's go bitches and honestly believe it. So let's say it's us and a friend, and our friend says let's go bitches. Our friend is, I guess, our brain in the situation. Or no, we are our brain. Our friend saying let's go bitches is what we want to be, right? So our friend says let's go bitches, but we in our mind immediately think of all of the reasons why we shouldn't. It's dangerous, it's financially irresponsible, it's so on and so forth, all these logical explanations of why we shouldn't, of why we can't, of why it will fail, why previous examples have failed before, etc. and so forth. And then now we've gotten to the point where we like actively forget about the idea of let's go bitches. We just think of the idea of what is to come from it, and we're just like, well, I don't remember what we were doing, but I know I'm not going to do whatever it was because of all the negative possibilities. And that's like, I guess, maybe not simpler, but another way of phrasing what Dr. K has said, and I think is going to continue to say, if I remember correctly.
Right? So it's the environment's effect on you. Like, it's not literally the environment. The environment has to impact you. There's like the outside and the inside. So for example, like if I have earplugs on and someone is talking to me, even though the environment is the same, like whether I have earplugs in or out, the environment is not reaching me. Does that make sense? So let's like think a little bit about like, you know, if you were raised, like how have you guys been conditioned? You're gifted. So literally what happens is this like stimuli from the outside create certain thought patterns. And then you guys have beliefs about yourself. And those beliefs live in your subconscious and generate thoughts. So if we think about a phobia, for example, like let's say I have a phobia of snakes because I got bit by a snake when I was a kid. How does that work? Like literally in the way that, like, how does that work? So I get bit by a snake, It generates an experience. The experience lives in my subconscious. And then that subconscious experience is a thought generator, which then like spawns. It's like a portal. And it's like spawning certain thoughts. You guys get that? So now the question is, okay, if I want to be present focused instead of future focused, how do I spawn present focused thoughts? Is that a good question that y'all are interested in?
Yeah, yes.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
How do I change from there's no point to let's go, bitches? And part of that literally is that you can condition your own mind by cultivating a particular kind of thought, right? So what we can say is that if you guys, like, for example, all live in a house and I show up every day and I gas y'all up, I'm like, believe in yourself, man. You can do it, bro. That's going to create a different kind of conditioning, right? Because like the reason you guys don't believe in yourself now is because you've been conditioned to believe that you're a failure. But at the end of the day, what I want you guys to realize is that whether I'm there or not there, the operative thing is that what sinks in. So if I show up and I'm gassing you guys up, but I'm Gujarati ma bolu to pachi tamne kai khabar na pade. No je पण બોલું તમને કઈ આવડત ન હોય ને કઈ ભાન નથી યાર. And so like it's what enters your mind that's important. Do y'all get that?
Yeah.
And so then comes the key thing, which is the cultivation of your own thoughts.
So what Dr. K essentially said without directly stating it, which I'm sure was picked up on, but I just want to reaffirm it, is that our perception of being failures was created from the perception that we needed to succeed. As Dr. K said, we were gifted. We were Olaf. We needed to succeed. And therefore, because we failed, we are failures to society, which we had continually been judged by before. Our entire being is judgment. To the point where now the only people judging us is ourselves, but we frame it in the way that is comfortable to us, which is that society is judging us. And that's not true. And that's the thing that we need to accept. And the best way to accept it, as Dr. K said, is to live in the present rather than the future. And he'll explain into why or how to do it. And he's already explained as to why.
And this is what really holds you guys back. Because I've been saying all along, this is basically the same thing, that the hurricane outside is created by you. It's the self-conditioning that gets imposed every day when you wake up and you think particular thoughts about yourself. These neurons literally form channels in your brain that are connections and start firing more commonly. So it's kind of like a game trail. Like if I have a field of grass and then I run across it, the grass gets put down a little bit. And then like a deer walks by and it's like, oh, there's a path that's a little bit easier to walk across. And then the deer goes down that and the grass gets trampled. And the grass gets trampled and the grass gets trampled. Your brain literally works the same way. That's literally the mechanism of learning. Right? So like when we think about memorization, it's like we're running that game trail, we're flattening that grass, and then you know something and it becomes instinctive. So the problem is that y'all's neurons have been conditioned, that's what we call conditioning. So your neurons have like cultivated a particular thought pattern. And so literally what you need to do is cultivate a different one. And so how does that work? That's because you guys ultimately have some control over your mind. Right? So I know this also gets weird, but there's the true self and then there's mental activity, which are separate. So there's consciousness and there's thinking. And we'll get to that in a second when I teach you guys how to meditate. So what y'all need to do is like literally in a moment in time, you can change your thought with intense willpower and a mana bar that's going to be depleted every time you do it. But you're laying down a new game trail. So it's going to be exhausting. So, like, you guys are literally going to be faced with a task, and you're going to say, there's no point. And the question is, in that moment, can you tell yourself, let's go, bitches? And now you guys have to be careful, because you're still going to fail. And now you have to allow yourself to fail. You have to be patient with yourself. Understand that a tiny little mouse has run through the grass when you say, let's go, bitches. And then tomorrow comes, and there's like a super highway, which is, I have so much potential and I suck at life. And then there's this tiny little game trail which a mouse has gone down. And then it's like, hey, let's do a few push-ups today. Fuck it, I'm never going to be in shape. Let's go, bitches. And then it's a rabbit. And then it's a deer. And this is how change happens. And we see that process going on with Jacob. Right? Like, he's been in the shitter for a while, but he's like getting some kind of relief and acceptance. And I'd guess that's not something that like he wakes up and he's like, like I'm accepting where I am. It's like, it's a slog. Right? Like, it's a slog. And that's why you guys have to be patient with yourselves, and you have to give yourself time to change. And you have to understand that y'all are, undoing anywhere between 18 and 20 some odd years of conditioning. And that the neurons in your brain have taught you to believe this thing about yourself. But this is the other really important thing to understand, is to have the revelation that this is not truth. I don't know if you guys get this. You guys have thoughts about yourself, right? Are those thoughts true?
Maybe.
Not
exactly.
always.
Feel true.
Most of no.
So now I'm going to ask y'all, because y'all are gifted and talented. Are thoughts accurate representations of reality?
No.
No.
Sometimes.
Depends.
Right?
And I really, really, really like that point. And again, what I said earlier, I'm sure I got from this exact point in the discussion. You don't know what they're thinking. They're your thoughts. And your thoughts are not reality. You might be walking down the street and you trip, right? And you trip right in front of someone. And, someone saw you, right? And you just keep on walking because you're fine. You might be thinking, oh, they're so judgmental. Oh, they're probably laughing. Ha, ha, ha. And maybe they were. But maybe their thought was, I hope that person's okay. And after you walk away, they're like, well, nothing happened. What should I get for lunch? But in your mind, you're walking past and you're like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And that's, or we are, our anxious selves are like, oh my God, they're judging me. Oh my God, oh my God. But that's not the truth. It might be, but it might not be. And so the answer is no, they're not. Because even if they are, you don't know. You'll never be able to know unless they say it. So, just like, to you, it is a no, and it will always be a no.
Like, if they were, fucking unicorns, baby. So the first thing another thing that you need to understand is that you think all these things about you, but they're just thoughts. Like, what truth is there in a thought? I had a thought today that I was president of the United States. I had a thought today that CD Projekt Red mailed me CDs that have Cyberpunk on them. I can have, thoughts are just the fucking thoughts. They have no bearing in reality. Literally, they have, no bearing in reality. Yeah, I know you guys think they have some bearing in reality. That's a conversation for a different day. Experience has a bearing in reality. Thoughts don't.
And ironically, I kind of showed that in the way that I explained just now, where I was like, maybe it's true. Ironically, as Dr. K said, I believe that there is in some essence truth to a thought, despite the fact that I know or should know that there isn't. He doesn't get into that. I just found it funny and notable that he states that.
Right? So it's just thoughts, that you can cultivate thoughts. That the cultivation of thoughts is like a slow process. And that along the way, if you are expecting results, then you're going to be future focused and you will not continue the cultivation of thoughts. Does that make sense? And furthermore, so the reason I use the word cultivation, what is cultivation?
You sow the seeds and then come back for them later.
Absolutely. And what if there's nothing there? Did you cultivate incorrectly?
Yes.
No.
Maybe.
Incorrect.
No.
Right? So that's the whole point, is cultivation implies it's not creation. There's a difference between creating and cultivating. What's the difference?
Like, it takes time to cultivate something.
Creating
And
you
it's
doing all
not
the
certain.
work. Cultivating you.
Absolutely.
Set up that environment.
So it's about certainty, right? Like, creation is something I have control over. Cultivating is something that I don't. So I use some of this language, like, very carefully, because this language, like, there's a correlation between hope and cultivation. You guys get that? Like, if you cultivate a plant, like if I plant a seed, like, I hope it's going to grow. But that's the most that I can do, is hope. And the more you start living present focus, the more you say to yourself, let's go bitches, something magical will happen, which is that hope will start to be born. And the reason that hope will be born is because you are creating the circumstance which hope requires to be born, which is to have a mind in the present. Hopelessness is a child of the future. Like, by definition. You cannot be hopeless unless you are thinking about the future. If the focus of your mind is on the future, you can be hopeless. If I'm eating a sandwich and it's like tasty and I'm just eating it, can I be hopeless?
Not really.
It's like
No.
literally impossible. I want you guys to understand this. It is literally impossible to be hopeless if you are eating a sandwich. As long as your mind is on the sandwich. You're like, damn, this is a delicious sandwich. It can be a disgusting sandwich. But, so here's where the hopelessness comes in. If you start to think to yourself, man, I have to finish this sandwich. Hopelessness. Boom. You guys see that? God, this sandwich is fucking disgusting. No hopelessness. I have to finish it. Fuck. Hopelessness. So how do you be hopeful? If you lower expectations, how do you fight against the idea of not needing to do it anymore? You just stick your fucking mind in the present as best as you can. Let's go, bitches. You try to tell yourself that. Third thing, and we'll get to this now, is that, like, you can start to, there are other things you can do. Third thing is that you can train your mind to be in the present. So that's it's like focusing your mind on the present is just like focusing your gaze. It's something it's a skill that can be acquired. And meditation is basically the most direct skill that we use to train your mind to be in the present. Do you guys feel hopeless when you're playing a video game? That's a good question.
What if I'm thinking about the game?
Exactly.
It depends.
I'm thinking about the results of the game.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you guys
down.
know this. Like, you guys know this
Yeah.
shit, man. When you're playing a League of Legends game and you look at your draft, do you feel hopeless or not? Because if you're thinking about how the game is going to play out, there comes the hopelessness.
Yeah.
You guys see that? And then there are times where you're like, it's an even game and you're not thinking, you're like, okay, let's do it. Like, there's a 5-on-5 engagement around Baron. And like, in that moment, you're not like, that's what's fun, right? And like, that's why it serves as an escape, because video games put your mind in the present. That's why they're fun. And video games cause you to suffer. And that's when you're thinking about the future in the video game. It's like a microcosm for reality, which is wild. I love it. So you can even track your like enjoyment of games, and you'll see that like when your mind is in the present, You'll be having fun.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So I feel like, well, I mean, every decision made is for like some outcome in the future, right? How do you decide to do things and not think about the future? Like you apply to college because you have the expectation that in 4 years you're going to graduate with a degree. How do you keep your mind in the present always? Or like, how do you consider what you should do in the future?
Good question. Unfortunately, the answer is roughly the same, but I'll explain it in a different way. So you can consider the future, but it's about expectation versus like hope, right? So like I can say, so like let's just take so I'm going to talk about Dota, for example, because I don't know League that well. So there's a hero in Dota called Pudge. Anyone know who Pudge is? Pudge is like a fat guy that hooks things, okay? And like Pudge is the kind of hero that like has a skill shot, which there are fewer of in Dota. And then like Pudge is like the pick that ruins your games. Because you get a bad Pudge and then he's like useless. Like he can't do anything except for hook people. And then occasionally on the other team, you'll get a good Pudge and he's hooking the shit out of you guys and pulling you guys out of position. It's like, this is the kind of hero that just ruins your games. Because the enemy has a good one and you've got a bad one.
When I was listening to this the first time, I immediately thought of Yasuo. Because he's the first champion that I think about when it's like, oh man, there's a Yasuo on my team who's got like a 30% win rate. We're screwed. Or like there's a Yasuo on their team with a 30% win rate. We got this, and then theirs dominates and yours actually is bad or whatever. So yeah.
Okay. So like when you play a game of Dota, like you can think about trying to win, or you can say to yourself, let's go, bitches. Right? It's not really about winning or losing. It's not like we're going to draft to win. It's like, let's pick this fucking meme combo and wreck these shitties. And like when you play the game like that, it becomes more fun. Like sure, you have a calculation somewhere in your mind about like what the game is going to look like, but that's not where you sit. You don't sit in the future, you sit in the present and you're looking forward. Does that make sense?
So our outlook on the future should be that we hope things go a certain way and then not really like put too much pressure to have them go a certain way and just think about what we're doing now.
Exactly. So focus on action. Right? Like the question isn't, are we going to wreck these shitties? The question is, let's try to wreck these shitties. Like, how do we wreck these shitties? Like, let's do it. Go for it. And that's literally how, like, so you guys understand this. Like, if you play a game like that, if you play a game to have fun, like, let's pick some meme combo and stomp these noobs. And then even if you guys get crushed, you're like, let's do it again. Right? And like literally that's what Buddha discovered about life, is there are two ways to live life. And when you start living life like you're a meme lord, like it becomes fun and blissful. Because every day it's like, let's see like what we're eating for lunch. Oh God, this sandwich is awful. Let's see if we get wrecked tomorrow by another awful sandwich. Lulz? That's literally what enlightenment is. It's to treat good actions and bad actions in equanimity. Right? Because you guys know this, that like even if you get trolled really, really hard, you can still appreciate it. Right? And like it's silly, but like that's actually like the big thing. Like that's what Buddha discovered, that Buddha was like the ultimate meme lord. And he realized that if you live your life like a meme, like there's nothing can touch you. And you'll be blissful irrespective of what happens.
I think that's my favorite line in the whole thing. And the silliest is that Buddha was the ultimate meme lord.
So you can think about the future. And this gets also into like ambition and detachment, which maybe we can do a video on one day. But a lot of people like ask me, like, if I become detached from the outcome of my actions, how do I act? Because usually it's ambition that motivates me, and ambition is based on outcomes. And the short answer is try it. You'll be amazed. Because what you'll realize is that, like, your actions don't have to be motivated by ambition. They can be motivated by, like, excitement and curiosity and all kinds of other stuff. And just an appreciation for doing what you're doing. Right? And, like, the people who are happiest are the ones that enjoy their work. Because they're not thinking about it. Like, I work with a bunch of investment bankers, and they hate their job. And they, like, do it for the money. Like, that's no way to live. I mean, it is a way to live. It's a comfortable way to live. And so, like, you can enjoy an action in and of itself if you just devote yourself to the action. It's turning into a lecture. Other questions?
So I think we've like kind of we've touched like around it, but like so when I think like for probably a lot of people in general, but definitely for gifted kids, we're kind of put down this like predetermined quest line of you're gonna take these classes in elementary school, and then you're gonna take like honors classes in middle school, and then AP, or you're gonna go to a collegiate high school or something like that. And then maybe like more if you're like an immigrant kid, you're probably gonna get pushed down another quest line of lawyer, doctor, engineer. But if you're not, or once you're past
Very
that,
nice.
how do you start making choices when you've never made any?
What paralyzes you from making a choice, B?
The future. Yeah, we've done
There you go. Very good. So, can you guys turn that into an answer? I see that you've connected those two dots, but I think it's hard to turn that into an answer. So, like, do you guys have a sense? Right, so you just have to free yourself from consequences. So it's like, it's the difference between studying for an A and studying to understand the material. Like, why are you guys studying? And the more that you devote yourself to, like, learning the material, this is like a big scam in life, right? Is that, like, let me think about how to say this. We devalue the thing that leads to the result, and instead we value the result as a proxy to the thing. Right? So, like, what we really care about is, like, learning. Like, if you get hired for a job as an engineer, what we care about is that you understand engineering. But what society conditions us to place value on is grades. Because grades are a proxy for knowledge. And so the more that we get wrapped up in, like, this false thing, it's just like all ego and comparison. It's not actually about knowledge at all. And so the more that you kind of focus on the thing itself, like, how do you act? How do you choose? You've been conditioned. I get you, B. Like, I was conditioned too. And despite my best attempts, I still wound up as a doctor. Right? And, like, the reason I'm a good doctor is because I didn't want to be a doctor. And then, like, at the age of, like, 25, I was like, oh shit, maybe I actually want to be. Actually, I didn't even want to be a doctor when I went to med school. To tell you guys the truth. That's probably why I'm doing a good job, because I didn't care about it. Like, I became a doctor because my teachers were like, go get a doctoral degree. And I was like, okay. And oddly enough, it's like doing it for no reason. So I was like, or doing it for my own. It wasn't about the prestige or anything like that. It was just like, I have to do this if I want to take my vows and become a monk. So, okay, I guess I'll do that. And then like I failed, right? So I got rejected from like 20 medical schools, a lot. And then like each of those failures, it doesn't matter because like I'm not going to really be a doctor anyway. I'm just like doing this for the sake of like doing it so that my teachers can be happy, whatever. Maybe there's an outcome somewhere in there. But I think I trained myself to be like present focused. It's like, okay, you get 40 rejections. Like none of those rejections really influence like whether I apply the 41st time. I can take that information, I can integrate it, I can get feedback, but I'm still going to apply again. Like you can wipe 1,000 times on a boss and you can still like go in the next day and like try to wipe again. Right? If you guys have played Dark Souls, you understand what that's like. Like it's very frustrating that you're going to wipe over and over and over again, but like that's not the point. It's not like you don't go into a boss in Dark Souls and expect to down it the first time, or a WoW raid for that matter, or FF14. You know that wiping is part of the process, but each time you wipe, if it doesn't cripple you, it makes you stronger. Right? Each time you wipe, what I want you guys to understand is that like each failure in your life is gaining XP. And so it's about learning, not about performance. And that's why you guys are ADCs. So what happened in my case is like, I was a no one for a while, and then I was an average person, and now like people think I'm a someone. I'm no different from you guys. I'm like probably just about where y'all were when y'all are y'all's age.
And I think that point is very, that, or not even that point, that statement that Dr. K just said of he was, you know, higher than average, then became acclaimed or whatever. I personally, I don't know how these 5 individuals feel, as this could be a unique thing to me because of my specific situations. I'm not sure, or they could feel the exact same way, but I feel like they feel it to some extent. I have always wanted to be acclaimed. I, again, to go back to the ADC comparison that Dr. K just said, I want to be Olaf. I want to be impactful, immediately noticed, immediately acclaimed, held above. And like Dr. K said, we are ADCs. We're irrelevant, or at least we should be. And we need to accept that we should be for a good amount of time. And then when we accept that, we will be acclaimed. We will be what we strive to be, which is why Dr. K said we take time to develop. Because we never accepted that we are irrelevant.
Like, we're no different. The thing is, society looks at me differently, but like that's because society's dumb. And you guys look at me differently because that's y'all are dumb too. Seriously.
True.
Thank you.
Because you guys adopt the conditioning of society, which I don't blame you for, but let's not call it smart. Because capability to you guys thus far has been a burden, right? It's a potential. Let me ask you guys this. Where is potential, in the present or in the future?
The future.
There we go. You guys are trapped in the future. There's literally, show me potential. What is potential in the universe?
Doesn't exist.
Absolutely. There is just what is. And so if there's no potential, how can you be failures? Seriously. If any of you guys can answer that question, I will stop streaming. Because if I'm wrong about this, like this is the foundation upon which all the work that I do is built.
Well, I guess the only weird thing is like by that logic, no one can ever be a failure, I guess.
That is correct.
Okay.
Can you fail at stuff? Sure. Can I fail? Can I get an F on a test? Absolutely. I've done it before. Trust me. But like this is the concept of Advaita Vedanta, non-dualism. So is there a good sandwich or a bad sandwich?
There is just sandwich.
Convince me otherwise, right? So the good or the bad is what we apply to it. There's just a sandwich. Is it blasphemy or delicious? Depends on whether it's a BLT and you're Muslim. Like, you know, like the BLT is the BLT. And like where we end up with it is like wildly different based on some shit in here. And you guys think you're failures because of some shit in here. You guys aren't failures. There's no such thing. You guys are just where you are on your journey. Like, this is the only place you can be. How can you... this is silly. I could have been in a different place if I had done things... Like, how is that... like, show me anyone who's been in a different place because they did anything differently. Reality is, like, one thing, bros. At least until we prove, like, alternate universes. You guys start, like, dimensional shifting to, like, other places, like, then I'll eat my words. But until that shit is proven, and maybe one of y'all gifted and talented Aerospace Academy kids will discover this. You know, so like the whole concept of y'all being a failure is just wrong, man. No such thing. Enough for today?
And that concept is so hard for us because of how, as we explained before, how the video went over, how I've mentioned or whatever, our ego is so massive that we believe that we are the exception to this rule, that there is no failures, that we're so much better. We're not. And the fact that no one can be a failure, including ourselves, is so important to accept and so difficult to accept. I just needed to focus on that point for a second because it's very important.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm good.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I learned that Buddha is a meme lord.
Yes.
Yeah.
One of the greatest tricks he's ever pulled on the world is convincing people that he was something special. You guys know this? Like, I'll leave you guys with one last story. You guys know what Zen masters do when they attain enlightenment? The first thing that they do? Laugh.
What?
Because literally what the Zen tradition teaches you is that none of it is necessary. None of the meditation is necessary. It's all a scam. That's literally what Zen Buddhism teaches. Because we're all already enlightened. And it's all a big meme. Like, I kid you guys not. Like, if you go and study Buddhism, that is what they will tell you. There's no such thing as, like, not being enlightened. We're all enlightened anyway. And it's, like, all just a scam. If people have, you know, studied Buddhism, they'll understand that. But it's bizarre. They even say they're meme lords. Like, Buddha was the original meme lord. He was like the original troll. I'm going to teach you guys a bunch of stuff that's really hard that you never needed anyway. And then his story of enlightenment, you guys know this? So he like meditates for a really long time, and he does all these really hard systems of meditation. He's like, fuck it, I'm done. And then he goes and he sits under a tree and he's like, fuck this shit. And then he becomes enlightened. It's when he abandons everything that he gains his enlightenment. It's like, this is all dumb. Anyway. A lot of good stories about Buddha. Okay. So we've been at...
I do have one thing.
Yeah.
That I so, like, the idea of, like, Buddhist teaching is to, like, not take anything too seriously. And, like, the thing that you're kind of telling us is, like, something of the same, like, you know, live in the present, you know. Like, what about, like, commitments? And, like, not necessarily commitments to, like I don't know, like if you have like a family and like have kids and like you can't always be like, you know, fuck it, we ball. Sometimes you got to be like, okay, like I need to like think about the future of my kid, and like that can be, worrisome. Is that like a healthy worry?
Good question. So first of all, Buddhism never says don't take things seriously.
Okay.
In fact, it says the opposite. But so like, and that may sound like a contradiction with being a meme lord, but like, this may sound like a profound statement, but like, a meme is actually a very serious thing, right? It's like actually very profound. But anyway, so to answer your question, so this is where like we bring in dharma, right? So dharma or duty or responsibility. So this is where a lot of people like slip up because they think like, when I say let's go bitches, that doesn't mean that I get to do whatever I want to. In fact, it means the opposite. So like what I would say about, let's say, for example, family attachments and parenthood. So I'm a parent and I have children. So I love my children. I'm attached to my children. I was pretty good at the detachment thing until I had kids. And then actually what I realized, like, oh, this is pretty cool. Because then I realized this is actually part of my karma and this is the next level. Because then what I did is become detached from my attachment. And I kid you guys not. I know this sounds weird. I'd worked so hard to be detached and then I had kids and then I was like, oh, fuck, I'm attached now. All of my detachment has gone down the drain now that I'm like loving and investing my kids. And then one day I was meditating, I started laughing. I was like, isn't that silly? How attached I am to losing my detachment. And so then I was like, fuck it. I'm going to be attached. I'm going to love my kids. So be it. And then it's been fun since then. And I just let myself be invested in them. I let myself be worried. I let myself stay up late at night because one of them has a fever. And what I realized is like you actually live life more fully. Like let yourself be swept away by your family responsibilities. So be it. Like it makes no difference. Like you can still live up to your dharma. And I think you should live up to your dharma. And like living up to your dharma is simply, it's like taking a test. I'm not saying sit around and do nothing and don't take tests. I'm saying that you guys should go out and you should act. But when I'm raising my kids, I don't get bent out of shape about whether I'm doing a bad job. And now this is important to understand, so hopefully you guys can understand this distinction. I try to do the best that I can, and I don't get bent out of shape about doing a bad job. So I'm not saying absolve yourself of all responsibility. I'm not saying stop trying. Does that make sense? There's an entire gulf between doing the best that you can and getting bent out of shape. And what you guys do is the opposite. Because y'all get bent out of shape and don't do the best that you can. Y'all see that? So, oddly enough, like you can commit to your dharma, and this is the power of dharma, is that it flips those around for you. So there are a lot of other things that we haven't talked about today. Dharma is one, ego is one, dissolution of ego. But if you start living your dharma, because then it's about doing the action, right? Like if your family's depending on you, case in point. So like what we see in Alchem is like a sense of dharma. He's like, I've got to do this. This is what I have. This is what I owe myself to take care of myself. And I can't live like this anymore. That's actually, on its deepest level, it's a duty to himself. That he deserves more. And so he's devoting himself to that. Hope that answers your question.
Yeah. Awesome.
Okay. Cool. So I'm spent. I'm sure you guys are too.
Yes.
So I think maybe we'll have to skip meditation for today. Let me just ask you guys real quick. I mean, like, I usually don't talk this much. How do y'all feel about that?
I think it was awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Learned a
Okay.
lot.
Took a lot of the pressure off to perform.
Well, listen. So actually, I have to commend you guys, and so like, be careful. Okay. So watch what happens when I say this. Last thing I'll tell you guys. I'll leave you hanging after this. So I think you guys are so smart that like, I didn't need to ask you guys questions. You guys asked such insightful questions that I could give you answers. Y'all are so smart that I knew you could kind of keep up. So it's actually really fun for me. What does
Well,
that do to
if
you?
that's, I can't tell if that's a meme.
I preferred when you were calling us stupid.
Yeah.
Right? So there's a whole other bucket of stuff. Like, why is it that you guys can't sit with authentic praise? A lot of stuff you guys need to work on. And I don't know that you guys can't sit with authentic praise. I'm just making assumptions here.
I know I personally can't sit with authentic praise. It's strange because, as I stated before, I want to be in the public eye or whatever, be appreciated, like Dr. K is at the point in his life. But the fact of the matter is, even now when I am appreciated, I can't accept that, which is, a whole different issue, as he says. And that's something else that I have to deal with. But obviously, allowing myself to live in the present and allowing myself to accept my own failures will be a huge step in finally accepting people's genuine compliments. But I know, personally, I agree with Dr. K in that assumption.
But anyway, strong work today, my dudes. Even if I did most of the talking, it's hard to get me to talk, so well played. Any kind of closing thoughts or questions before we wrap up?
Just thank you. Yeah, this was like really insightful and a good discussion. Yeah. Definitely learned a lot. So I just thank you. Thank you for having us on here.
Yeah, I'm not super familiar with like your work. I've heard like a little bit about it, Dr. K. But do you have any recommendations for like? I know you said meditation. I have never heard anything about like you doing meditation before. Do you have any recommendations for things that we could look at for that?
Yeah, so we have a lot of like different meditations on our YouTube channel. You guys they're just kind of there. I think for y'all, I don't think it's a good time to teach meditation right now. Just because you have to be sort of cognitively there. But I will think a little bit about what kind of meditation for y'all specifically. And maybe we'll pop that up on YouTube once I think about it. So like, what's a good ego dissolving meditation? But that doesn't feel quite right to me.
Okay. Cool.
I guess I can give you guys sort of a meditation. So there are different kinds of meditations. One is a formal meditation practice. And one is something that is like more of it's not an alambana. So there's like, alambanas are like meditative techniques. So I'm going to give you guys a meditation that is not a technique. So I know it sounds weird. I want you guys to eat something that you dislike and appreciate it. So try that.
Okay.
Okay. I didn't say like it. I didn't say enjoy it. I said appreciate it. So can you just like eat something and like, even if you dislike it, appreciate it? Try to do that and see what happens. Okay?
Okay.
Good luck. Strong work.
Thank you.
See ya.
And I guess my final point on this, first off, check out this site there. Check out this YouTube. If you found this interesting, it's HealthyGamerGG. Oh, you can't see it. I cut it off. Whatever. It's HealthyGamersGG. Super recommend it. Dr. K has gone over a ton of things. This is the first one that I've seen all the way through. His videos have been recommended to me because of the people that he's talked to before. And I got like a couple minutes in and then turned them off because it wasn't interesting to me or whatever, because I couldn't relate. But obviously I'm not saying watch every single video, but I'm saying chances are he's covered something that you relate to or have had questions about. And like the disclaimer says, this isn't a replacement for psychology or anything, or for going to a therapist. This is just an assistance tool, or something to make you feel, I don't know, normal, I guess. Other people deal with these issues, and everyone always has such a negative perception of themselves if they're down or whatever. But they don't need to, and these sort of tools really do help you create that pathway towards therapy or continue that pathway towards therapy. But yeah, to the other final note was that I tried that meditation technique that meditation that isn't a technique that he described. I ate a chocolate mint like cookie or whatever. I hate chocolate and mint together. I've always hated it. I found it disgusting all the time. And I forced myself to do it. And you know what? I'm not going to lie. It was hard. Like, while I was eating it, I kept thinking, ew, this is gross. Ew, I don't like this. But then, I forced my mind, which is the point of meditation. I forced my mind to revert to the initial point of the meditation of focusing on it. Or, in other words, focusing on the present, appreciating it. Oh, it took a lot of work to put this, to make this cookie, like, even just thinking like, oh, the factory process, oh, people appreciate the taste in general, oh, so on and so forth. And, like, it really helped me focus in on it, despite the fact that I didn't like it. And you know what? As I continued, it became less and less, ew, I don't like it, and more like, I'm eating a cookie. Like, whatever. And like you said, it helped me with the idea of thinking in the present for just that small moment. And it's stuff like that I hope to work on in the future with much bigger things and so on and so forth. But yeah, I'll probably cut this down and upload it to YouTube. My YouTube is very inactive. I actually deleted all my videos prior due to me taking a step away from when I had previously uploaded. I don't even think my YouTube is linked on my Twitch anymore. It might not be. I don't know. Yeah, it's not. It used to be, but it's not anymore. But yeah. If you stopped on by at any point, I appreciate you. If you're watching this on YouTube, I appreciate you. If you would like me to do something like this again, I can. I'm sure I relate to other videos like this, or I don't mind talking about myself as I've continued to develop my own well-being. As I've continued to develop my own identification, I guess, my own identity. The last year and a half or something, due to personal reasons. Like, I've grown. And I continue to grow, and I hope to continue to grow even more. So, like, talking about this is really helpful, and I enjoy it. So, I'll probably do this again anyway. But if you want to see a specific one or ask if I can relate to it in some way, let me know. But, yeah, I think I'm done. Even with the stream, I've been going on for a while. I'm a little tired. I want to eat. And I'll probably play like a game on my own before I go to sleep. Just relax my brain a little bit. But yeah. Bye.